Sword of Coming Chapter 10-15. Sorry for the late upload. Pomo Peak is one of the few high mountains in the Xuanhuan Mountains, but it is not occupied by anyone. There was once trying to open a dojo here, but because the Yufu Jun was bored, he would throw magic weapons at Pomo Peak. Sacrifice a rain flag, throw a pot in play and smash the rocks here. Over time, it will become a land without owners. Therefore there are many pits in the Moffing Mountain, and the cracks are like cobwebs everywhere. The Taoist is high quality, most of them have skills in the face, and Qing Qian, who has been in the Tao for 500 years, wears a very high-rank Tianxian cave clothes, and hangs a simple gilt bell at his waist. This person seems to be rejuvenated. The Taoist priest breathes long, and every time the small circle rotates, there will be a grand atmosphere of the sun rising and the moon setting, and the stars are moving. Bu Qingqian cast a blindfold and fell into the eyes of ordinary middle five monks, that is, a young Taoist monk in a blue Taoist robe. Because Zhao and Yu, two Taoist masters, have 3 daughters and 1 son, Yu Zhen, as the nominal prince of the divine palace in Xuanhuan Mountain, held his breath. In terms of fighting alone, this contemporary head of the Jianghu faction is a good player. He once fought against a monster Jindan Zhenxiu on the battlefield of Dali, accompany the capital without falling behind. Invited Qing Qian to serve as a protector of the country, and asked for 3 resignations. The talisman wearing the ink blue python robe is more interested in the sword fairy of the Tianqiao County. Old Longqing and the Qingxing Kingdom Jianghu faction have never had any intersection, neither incense or hatred. On the way here, Yu Zhen gave him a general introduction to the situation on Xuanhuan Mountain. The reason why he stopped at Pomo Peak was to take off the python robe given by the family ancestral hall. Qing Qian smiled and said, "I would like to trouble you, young master Yu, and tell Zhao Fujuan that Pindao won't go to the mountain to congratulate you tonight, so as not to disturb the yaxing of your distinguished guests who are drinking. Indeed, it's like a group of thieves who have fallen for the grass, drinking and celebrating there, and suddenly there is a county captain who is specially responsible for arresting thieves." Qing Qian continued, "It's just that the 3 jade seals, among which the heir of the emperor, Baoshi, will be handed over to the poor and brought back to the capital tonight. The other 2 parties need not worry. If the 2 palace lords are unable to part with them for a while, they should be borrowed by your majesty. The 2 princes of Xuanhuan Mountain are temporarily making things for their study, but they must be returned to the Qingxing Kingdom by the end of the rainy season this year at the latest. Young Master Yu, Pindao will be here waiting for news half an hour if there is no Xuanhuan Mountain. After sending the royal seal of the Emperor Fang Si, the poor man will come to the door to take all the seals in person, saving Zhao Fuyang an extra trip to the capital." Yu Zhen smiled wryly, and Fu Qi, an outsider, also sensed something was wrong. The Lu clan of the Qingxing Kingdom is obviously determined to tear up the face with Xuanhuan Mountain. Xuanhuan Mountain is divided into upper and lower mountains, falling Yuanshan Den's house, Zhao Fuyang Wuding Mountain Fanwan house, Yuchuanji. In addition, there are 2 temples of mountain gods. Li Dang is the mountain of Wuding Mountain Temple. Regarding the seal of the 3 parties, the previous offer on the Xuanhuan Mountain side was the mountain gods of the 2 mountains, Zueyuan and Wuding Temple. This is of course the 2 princes who spoke at the Lion. It is absolutely impossible. If Emperor Lu really dares to condescend like this, I am afraid that he will only become the laughing stock of the Emperor and General of Izhou and the immortal master on the mountain. As for business, there is always a tug of war between asking prices and paying back the money. In fact, the 2 sides had secretly negotiated before, and they talked about the fact that a servant of the Ministry of Rites could seal the 2 mountains, but they got stuck on the cost of building the temple. In the end, is it the Lu family's inner palace who paid for it or King Xingguo who gave the credits? Xuanhuan Mountain would pay for it himself. Yu Zhen hesitated for a while and said in a slightly astringent voice, "Why should a real person embarrass a junior who hasn't reached the door yet? It's better to come early than to come by coincidence. Since I happened to bump into young Master Yu here at Pomo Peak, there is a clear reason for this." Qing Qian said indifferently, "It's just a few words, what's the embarrassment? Why, young Master Yu doesn't even give this face to the poor. It's because he feels that he has attached himself to the old Longqing Fujian Hall of Fame, and his eyes are higher than the top. If Pindao remembers correctly, Fujian is in the line of fame, specializing in raising idlers, and according to the ancestral teachings, neither imperial examinations nor military merits in the battlefield, nor can they serve as worshippers or guest ministers in immortal palaces and secular dynasties on the mountain." The old man with the appearance of a young man was obviously beaten with his noble talisman. Fu Qi was not annoyed but became more and more curious. What kind of backing did Emperor Lu of Qingxing Kingdom have recently found so that Qingqian could not even care about the Fu family in the old Longqing? You must know that the patriarch Fu Qi, although he has stepped down as the old Dragon City Lord, is now a cultivator in the Jade Purity realm. He has 2 semi-immortal weapons at the same time. Compared with the old Longqing Fu family, the Jianghu faction is better than the monks, the financial resources, and in fact, there is no comparison in terms of contacts. Only the relationship between the old Longqing Fu clan and the Dali domain king Songmu is now known to everyone in Aquarius. Of course, the Fu family of Yanyutang is only one of the 6 houses of the Fu family, and it cannot be equal to the Fu family of the old Longqing. Moreover, as Qingqian said, it is relatively difficult to support. The family ancestral hall is at least 20. There are a few as many as 40 people members of the Fu clan in Yanyutang. For hundreds of years, there has only been a symbolic seat in the past. To put it nasty, it was used by the Fu clan to raise waste. However, the Yanyutang Fu clan was out of power within the family, but it was definitely not something that a Jianghu faction could provoke casually. The Jianghu faction had no cultivator nascent soul sitting on the top of the mountain for more than 300 years. Qingqian waved his hand. Half an hour is enough for young Master Yu to discuss a countermeasure with the 2 palace lords. Remember, whether this matter is successful or not, the Xuanhuan mountainside will give Pindao an accurate word. Yu Zhen in sackcloth sandals sighed, then folded his hands and clasped his fists to say goodbye. Junior will return to the mountain and give a message to the real person. Taking the talisman to the Xuanhuan mountain, Yu Zhen's face was full of haze, and after staying away from splashing Mo Peak for dozens of miles, Yu Zhen laughed in his heart. "I'll let you see a joke." Fu Qi smiled and said, "Brother Yu thinks of himself too much, and if he is to be laughed at, who can compare to our Yanyutang's Fu clan's son?" Yu Zhen teased, "Yes, why not, the group of sword immortals in Xinjiang Mountain." Fu Qi grabbed the collar with one hand, choked the tactic with the other and recited the Dharma tactic in silence, put the python robe on his body into a ball, lowered his head and put it in his sleeve. This old man seems to be a magician, and the way of cultivating the Tao can be described as complicated. The so-called artisans of Fu Qi are not the way of ancient alchemy, but the art of arithmetic. Artisans are often good at arithmetic and proficient in astronomical calculations, but they have always been in a low position among the hundreds of schools of thought, similar to the situation of merchants. Only when he said, "If 1 + 1 really must be equal to 2, then what is the matter of refining qi, refining substances and alchemy in the world?" The artist was ridiculed by the mountain. Yu Zhen asked suspiciously, "How can you see it?" Fu Qi said, "If it weren't for the fact that you were like water and fire, I would have to guess whether Qingqian and the 2 palace monarchs came from the same line." Yu Zhen said angrily, "Don't betray you." Fu Qi explained, "The vestment on Qingqian's body has the scene of the great transformation of Taoism and the galloping and galloping. It is magnificent and breathtaking. It is not an ordinary magic weapon. Compared with the golden bell of the fire that hangs on the waist of the old man, the rank of the treasure that is publicized to the outside world is only higher than that. Even the blue spirit talisman that is said to be able to command ghosts and gods cannot be compared with it. If I hadn't guessed wrong, this robe itself is a book from heaven." Yu Zhen asked, "Can your kid break through the blindness of a land fairy?" Fu Qi smiled and said, "Family handed down tricks." On the robe of the real Qingqian the yin and yang qi were vaguely visible. Yu Zhen teased, "What does this have to do with the artist?" Fu Qi, I'm really convinced. You literati who are full of poetry and books, it's true that there are no donkey characters on 3 paper coupons. Fu Qi said in a single word, "Qingqian's robe, which covers the world and praises the gods, the key is that the 7 politics are right-handed. Obviously, it is a treasure that has a long history, and it may be older than the history of the Jianghu faction." Yu Zhenqi laughed, "What are you talking about?" Fu Qi was helpless for a while. Being friends with a vulgar guy like you is exhausting. I have to explain to this friend who is not familiar with the language and ink what the 7 political affairs, also known as the 7 luminaries, are astronomical terms, referring to the sun, the moon, the gold, the wood, the water, the fire, the earth, and the 5 stars. There was a quarrel, and the dispute between Confucianism and Confucianism about the left-handed and right-handed rotation of the 7 lights has been arguing for a long time. The Confucian sages who compiled the astronomical calendar and the Lu family of the Yin-Yang family in China, as well as several ancestors of the art masters, have not fought. In the early days, the right-handed theory of the 7 politics had the absolute upper hand, and it almost became the conclusion. Based on this, Fu Qi can conclude that the Taoist vestment with the right-handed celestial image on Qingqian's body is extremely old. It is really difficult for ordinary qi practitioners to come into contact with this kind of inside story that seems to be hanging high. Fu Qi is also from the line of Yen Yutang, who is rich in books. Qi sure practice unimportant miscellaneous knowledge. It's just that there are still some inside stories, so I didn't say much about the Fu Qi. For example, Qing Qian's robe is very likely to be able to open up the dark, obvious, and the way of day and night. In short, it can help Qing Qian walk in the shadows. The way. Fu Qi reminded, "Brother Yu, I remember going to my uncle and aunt's side and only said that I was a Shan Zai Xiu from the Yunxiao dynasty." Yu Zhen nodded and smiled. "You also remember not to be targeted by my sister. It's a friend, so I kindly remind you." On the other side of Splashing Mo Peak, Zhang Kaiqin asked, "Qing Shibua, will Zhao Fuyang really hand over that Fangxi Emperor's seal?" The Taoist priest with a young face said confidently, "If it is normal, he will probably think that I am bluffing and ignore it. I will inevitably take a trip to Hehuan Mountain in person. Tonight is the most prosperous scene of Hehuan Mountain. Zhao Fuyang and Yu Chuanji instead, they will be surprised and won't dare to take it seriously. If Zhao Fuyang is obsessed, he will have to clear the door for his uncle." The joke of Fu Qi is really in one sentence. Zhao Fuyang was indeed a disciple of the Jianghu sect, and he was favored by a certain Jianghu sect patriarch. He was born and has never been able to rank among the descendants of the patriarch's hall. Later there was another disturbance. Zhao Fuyang left the line of Jingxian Temple in Qingjing Peak in a fit of anger. In fact, Qingjing Peak is the ancestral mountain of the Jianghu faction, and the position of the head of the past dynasties has been firmly controlled by Jingxianen. It was only in Qing Qian's generation that Cui Qingfeng came from behind. That Zhao Fuyang was born from a mountain python. He obtained a fortune in Jingxianen, and after practicing Taoism, he left the Jianghu sect and became a loose immortal. By collecting the jade seal of the subjugated country, he absorbed the dragon energy and used it to supplement the Taoism. This mountain-refining testimonial, cultivated into the golden immortal fruit position mentioned by the Qingjing Peak lineage, then Zhao Fuyang can turn into a Jiao without taking water, and leave Hehuan Mountain, which is both a dojo and a cage, and the sky is high and the earth is wide. A nascent soul realm mountain flood dragon is enough to roam Aquarius continent. Cheng Qian glanced at the juniors beside him with an expression of admiration in his eyes, and said with a smile, "Kaiqin, no matter what, since that big man has agreed to participate in the ceremony, King Xingguo has no worries." The old man squinted his eyes and looked at the outline of Hehuan Mountain in the distance. "If our borders of Qingxing Kingdom are filled with unpopular goods, they are either demons or ghosts, and they all dare to call themselves Xiaoshujian Lake. It's too outrageous to make this thousands of miles of mountains and rivers smoky. Fortunately, there is still some time before the mid-year ceremony, otherwise I will be shameless and go to see that Chen Yingguan." Zhang Kaiqin nodded. If Chen Pingan traveled south to the capital of Qingxing Kingdom in the middle of the year and attended the ceremony, then the existence of this place is destined to be unable to cover the fire. It is not ordinary for this young hidden official to hear that there is such a sneaky sight. Unsightly. Not to mention the Lu clan and the Jianghu faction in the Qingxing Kingdom, the Zhang clan in Tianqiao County where Zhang Kaiqin lives, will also feel uncomfortable. In short, it was she who had gone on a trip to Nujiadu with Hong Yongbo before, and accidentally met the young mountain master who was also hanging out in Baozhai. To his surprise, the other party agreed to participate in the crown ceremony of the Prince of Qingxing Kingdom. The Emperor Lu of the Qingxing Kingdom and Qing Qian, the real protector of the country, made up their minds to join forces with the Zhang family of Tianqiao County, and secretly communicate with the other two imperial courts, at any cost, and they must take Hehuan Mountain within 1,000 miles. Clean up and pacify the demons. It would be naive if Hehuan Mountain felt that Cheng Qian's appearance this time was just for the three-party jade seal. Cheng Qian stared at the Hehuan Mountain and said with a smile, "There is a saying in the market that it is 3 feet of soil in a sunny day, and 1 street of mud in rain, to describe a road that is not easy to walk." Zhang Kaiqin smiled knowingly. "Cheng Shibua, that's why we need to clean water and splash the lus on the street. Everything is only for the presence of Chen Yingguan of the Luopao Mountain." Cheng Qian asked, "Kaiqin, you can persuade this person to come to the capital. It's a miracle." Hong Yonghua, the stuffy gourd, was vague in the letter. "Can you elaborate?" "It is said that this Lord Qin Shan easily does not sell anyone's face." Zhang Kaiqin looked embarrassed and said, "Cheng Shibua, there is absolutely nothing to hide, it's just good luck." Relying on the fact that he went to Qingfenfang several times in his early years, he developed a love affair with Hongba. Cheng Qian smiled and didn't ask any more questions. Just talking about the young hidden official, The old man couldn't help but think of the old woman who accompanied the capital on the battlefield. The young woman with the in a bun, her boxing skills are really invincible. It would be interesting if this Zheng Qian, or Pei Qian, the founding disciple of xuanhuan, appeared in the town. I don't know how the two rulers feel. On the other side of Hehuan Mountain, Fanhuan Mansion is located in Wuding Mountain, Xiaoshan. Zhao and Yu, the two palace lords, personally brought the distinguished guest here, and the shadow wall was actually a huge snow money. When going around this shadow wall, Qinju looked at it from the corner of his eye. It was wide or thin. Yu Chuanji once traveled to Shujian Lake, and was an old acquaintance with Tian Hujuan, a female cultivator of Xianxia Island, and had a good relationship. However, at that time Tian Hujuan had not yet formed a pill, but he was still a cultivator in the Dragon Gate realm, and his pedigree status was not the eldest disciple of true monarch Zhejiang Lu Jimao, but the second disciple. It's just that the senior brother had bad luck and met the younger junior brother of a certain demon king. The two sides had a grudge and killed him casually. Master Lu Jimao didn't even pursue the matter. Today Tian Hujuan is the island owner of Sulan Island, a native Jindan cultivator of Shujian Lake, and a genealogical cultivator of the True Realm sect. He has a place in Gonglu Island Zushirtang. It's just that compared to the little junior brother surnamed Gu, he is still the difference between clouds and mud, which pales in comparison. After all, the latter is now the direct disciple of Zheng Juzhong in Beidasheng, and there is a gossip that spread to Bea Pingzu, the fairyland Han Xiao. She is very fond of this nephew. When the banquet living room was seated, Qinju found that on the beam of the room, there were wood carvings. Standing there were three old gods of Fu, Lu, Shou, and a little fairy, which had the beautiful meaning of the auspicious star shining brightly in the hall. In fact, the whole banquet hall was made of arty Yu Chuanji. She dismantled a gorgeous ancestral hall from a noble family of a dynasty under the mountain. She then asked the craftsmen to label the parts one by one, and moved them to Wuding Mountain. Almost exactly the same as the old house. Hehuan Mountain's uphill and downhill, Suiyuan and Wuding are all changed mountain names. They used to be famous mountains with great history. Suiyuan Mountain used to be the mountain of the Prince of Zhongyue in a big country. There was a royal family temple. Wei and the servant of the Ministry of Industry led tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians. It took 10 years before and after. He overhauled the mansion and built more than 20 palaces here. His status was second only to the 5 mountains. It is only said that the Wuding Mountain at the foot, the predecessor of the Fanhuan Mansion, was historically the magnificent private residence of a county owner. 2 hosts and 1 guest, sitting in the Taisher chair, chatted about the recent landscape anecdotes of Aquarius. For example, the Lingfei Temple in the neighboring country of the Yunshao dynasty in the south has been upgraded to a Taoist palace. Had identity. Qinju's master was Chief Lu of the True Realm sect. Now the entire Aquarius, even if you add the Buddhist Guangfu Temple and the Taoist Lingfei Palace, how many sects are there? Yu Chuanji spoke directly, half-jokingly. Brother Qin, Lu Laoqing is an immortal, and he must be aiming to ascend the Great Road. Is it possible for Lu Jinjuan to take over as the suzerain of the True Realm sect? Qinju smiled and didn't take up the conversation. He didn't dare to talk about a topic that could kill people if he was not careful, so he just touted a few words of sect master Liu's hard work. Zhao Fuyang drank a sip of the cloud tea that was fried in the falling Yuanshan temple, and said with a smile, I heard that the great monk at Guangfu Temple just held a ceremony for his promotion last year. On the Luapa Mountain, although the hidden official, the Lord. I didn't congratulate myself, but I asked Wei Shanjun of Beiyue to help send a couplet. Guangfu Temple also attached great importance to it and linked it with the couplet of Shenkong Temple in Middle-earth. Qinju looked calm, but he was in a complicated mood. He nodded, it's true. If possible, Qinju would never want to see the person surnamed Qin again in his life, even if the other party also served as the accountant for his own Xianxia Island for a while. Yu Chuanji said, it is said that this great monk has a profound Buddhist teaching, and has 2 Zen illusions, namely plucking the clouds to fill the Na and putting the tiger back to the mountain, and it is famous for moving a continent. Hearing Fuyang mention it, according to legend, the late Emperor Dali once summoned this eminent monk to talk about Zen, but when they walked in the imperial garden, all the birds were frightened and the foxes and rabbits fled far away. Emperor Dali asked with a smile. He only heard that the monks who had attained the Tao were walking in the mountains and forests, and the beasts not only did not disturb them, but they went on a blind date and wished to protect the Dharma. Why is it like this today? As a result, guess what? The old monk replied, the old man is easy to kill. Brother Qin, you have a lot of knowledge. Do you know if this is true or false? Qinju nodded and said, It happened to be mentioned by the master, and this is true. The master also said that the national master of Dali was also on the side at that time, and once said to the old monk, "How can a monk have so many thieves in his heart to kill? Is raising tigers a problem?" Yuchuanji was stunned. "What do you mean?" She turned to look at her husband. Zhao Fuyang pondered for a moment, nodded and said, "It's really the words of the immortal in the clouds, it's unbelievable." After that, Yuchuanji mentioned a few embarrassing things about Jingyang Mountain. Now, on Beipingza Mountain, if you don't talk about Jingyang Mountain, which is like a cloud of swordsmen, and don't laugh a few times, it's not called chatting. In fact, the three of them talked about these things, even teasing the Jingyang Mountain that had just been promoted to the sect for a few days, like a rich man in a remote county talking about the richest man in a rich country. Qinju itself is only a Dragon Gate realm. If it is only this realm, it is far from making the two palace masters and Taoist companions of Hehuan Mountain, both of which have golden cores, to be so respectful, and even Yuchuanji revealed some points when he spoke. Flattery and flattering. In fact, with the means of Zhao Fuyang and Yuchuanji, it is not impossible to kill a golden elixir together. Last time, the cultivator Zhang of Tianchao County attacked Hehuan Mountain aggressively. A pure old man with a golden body is a stumbling block, and they really want to leave a golden elixir to be a guest at Hehuan Mountain by their couple. Yuchuanji and Tianhujuan are old acquaintances, and Zhao Fuyang and Qinju are also friends. When Zhao Fuyang left the Jinkai sect with hatred, he also thought of staying at Shujian Lake, but he came to the secret method of his practice in Shujian Lake. It doesn't fit, and more importantly, the water in Shujian Lake is too deep, not to mention Lu Laoqing of Gonglu Island, who was already in the upper 5 realms at that time, only Lu Jimao of Qingsha Island and Zhongsu of Oriole Island, which one is easy elder? Zhao Fuyang was only in the Dragon Gate realm back then, and of course he didn't dare to occupy the island there to practice cultivation. Time has changed and 100 years have passed. Zhao Fuyang can't imagine that Qinju is a vicious man of Yixio in his bones. Become a genealogy monk of a sect. The fourth miss appeared outside the banquet hall together with Li Dang, the mountain god. She took off the hood, revealing an oval face that was quite similar to that of Lily. Yuchuanji looked pampered and introduced to Qinju. "Brother Qin, this is the fourth eldest in the family, the youngest. His name is Zhao Yan, who has been spoiled by Fuyang since he was a child, and Fuyang is reluctant to marry her. I don't dare to let her go out. Take her with me. I can still control a little bit. If I get married, I'm afraid that in a few days, I will be kicked out by my husband's family and run home crying." The woman hurriedly gave a blessing. Zhao Yan pays respects to Uncle Qin. Qinju and Yan Yu said, "I heard from the senior sister that the 4 girls are very qualified to practice Taoism. When they were in their early 20s, they entered the realm of the cave. The genius of the sky. Let me see, in the future, Hehuan Mountain will directly recruit the son-in-law. Don't marry far away, the fat water will not flow to outsiders' fields." Li Dang hurriedly clasped his fists. Little God has seen immortal Master Qin. Genealogical cultivators have their own foundation and way of life, and Yamazawa Yeshio also has his own way of survival. Aquarius has an undocumented pamphlet written by the person who compiled this book. It records the people who should not be provoked by the immortal mansion and dynasty in Ijo, a list of more than 100 people. For example, Qinju and his junior brother Chaozha from Qingsha Island are all listed in this booklet, but their rankings are relatively low. A lake of books and slips accounted for nearly 1/10 of the list, as well as young monks such as Lu Kaisang from Oriole Island and Xuanhuan from Gumming Island. Of course, an immortal like Tianhujuan, the master of an island in Sulan Island, naturally does not need to be on the list. Zhao Fuyang said, "Li Dang, there are no outsiders here, you can speak directly." Li Yin said, "Reporting to the 2 palace lords, Zhang Yujiao and Jinluo's attitudes are relatively smooth, neither nodding their heads nor saying that they will forcibly climb the mountain. Now they are in the small town at the foot of the mountain." Zhao Fuyang introduced the background of the 2 monks to Qinju. Yuchuanji smiled and said, "These 2 children are indeed cultivators of genealogy. They both traveled in the mountains and waters. Qingqing, I and I arrived at the Hehuan Mountain boundary." Zhao Fuyang said, that Zhang Yujiao is a sword cultivator of the middle 5 realm. It should not be underestimated. If he has an accident here, the Zhang clan of Tianchao County will be cut off from his heart and will not give up. Li Tang, you send the order. As long as the other party does not climb the mountain and commits crimes as promised, the town is not allowed to take the initiative to provoke them. Li Dang clasped his fists and took the order. Xiaoguan respects the law of the government. Knowing daughter Mo Ruomu, Yuchuanji asked with a smile, "Yenner, what does the young sword fairy look like?" Zhao Yin picked up a chair and sat down, nodded and smiled. It's pretty. If Jianghu wasn't there they wouldn't talk like this. After a cup of tea, Zhao Fiyang turned his head to look out the door, saw two figures and snorted coldly, "You're still willing to come back." It turned out to be Yu Formation and Fu Qi. Yu Chuanji was immediately unhappy and stared. "Yuzhen finally came home, what kind of face do you have? It's not your own, so you don't want to see it like this?" Zhao Fiyang said, "If Yuzhen was my own and dared to stay home all year long, I would know that I was idle outside and would not be willing to share the affairs of the two governments. I would have been hung up and beaten a few times." Yuzhen looked embarrassed. In fact, Zhao Fiyang the stepfather treats him well. He is both a father and a master. He preaches carefully, and he can be called a gift from all his money. He also gave him a heavy weapon that can become a treasure, even more kissable than my father. Yu Chuanji smiled and asked, "Who is this little brother?" Yuzhen introduced with a smile. "A friend, surnamed Yen and first name Shi, is a loose cultivator from the Yunxiao dynasty. We walked through the strange Qiufeng temple together and exchanged life for friendship." Zhao Fiyang said with a smile, "The little brother has a good name, he is famous for his style and he has nothing to shoot. Swallows are entertaining and they are always endless. If this is true it is really a little fairy." Fu Qi hurriedly clasped his fists. "The younger generation pays respects to Zhao Fujuan, Yu Fujuan. Yu Zhen is different from his younger sister Zhao Yan. He has been to Shujian Lake before, and he is no stranger to Tianhujuan and Qingju, who are family friends and elders on the mountain," so he said bluntly. "Just now, Qing Qian and Zhang Kaiqin were on the other side of Pomo Peak. Showed up, the old man asked his father to hand over the three-party jade seal tonight. When the rainy season ends this year, the other two parties will return to the Lu family of Qingxing Kingdom. If the Xuanhuan mountainside does not agree to this, the time will start from when I leave Pomo Peak. Within an hour, Qing Qian will personally climb the mountain." Qingju's face was expressionless. Zhao Fuyang frowned slightly. Yu Chuanji wondered, isn't this Qing Qian dizzy? Or is it because of his love that he couldn't bear the anger of the Zhang clan in Tianqiao County, so he had to give the latter an explanation? But even so, it wouldn't make him like this. Take the old bones to climb the mountain and risk yourself? Yuzhen, have you ever seen the whereabouts of Zhang's children in Tianqiao County and the monks enshrined in Qingxing? Are there any Zhu soldiers under Qing Qian's command hidden nearby? Yuzhen shook his head. It seems that there are only Qing Qian and Zhang Kaiqin. Yu Chuanji burst into laughter. Could it be that the two of them, together with Zhang Yujiao and Jin Luo from the town, are going to fight with Xuanhuan Mountain? Cheng Lauer didn't know how to choose a good day for reincarnation but chose today? The three-party jade seal was originally just a sale of Qingxing Kingdom to break wealth and eliminate disasters. After negotiating the price, there was no need to fight and kill at all. Are you alive or dead? Qing Xinghua is not afraid of hurting its vitality here, and losing a battle at the border? Zhao Fiyang squinted his eyes and said, if something goes wrong there must be a demon. Cheng Qian is the most pragmatic person, and he will never stand up for the Zhang clan in Tianqiao County. Qing Qian is an old fox with a lot of shrewdness. When he was young he was good at calculating. Otherwise there was also a golden elixir in the Jingxian temple of Qingjing Peak. He should have been the best choice to inherit the head. Qing Qian, who had been at the top of the line for a few years, took over as the head? Yu Chuanji asked, will Zhang Qiong hide in the dark? Zhang Qiong is the ancestor of the Zhang clan in Tianqiao County, that is, the great-grandfather of Zhang Kaiqin, the sword immortal. Because of his achievements in the battlefield of the capital a few years ago, he received a third-class no-mind card issued by the Dali Punishment Department. If this old thing is really reluctant to be shameless, Zhang Qiong only needs to hang this waste cart, struttingly climbing the mountain, just rummaging through the box, searching for the jade seal everywhere. Zhao Fuyang and Yu Chuanji really dare not stop it. It's just that the last time the cultivator Zhang attacked Xuanhuan Mountain, Zhang Qiong didn't show up for some reason. Zhao Fuyang's heart became heavy and he thought about it carefully. It's really not possible. I will personally go to Splashing Muffin. Yu Zhen said goodbye and left, and arranged for Fu Qi to stay in a mansion. Zhao Yan followed out of the banquet room and Yu Zhen asked in a low voice, where's the third one? Zhao Yan looked strange and said with a playful smile, third sister is busy dressing up. Yu Zhen didn't ask any more questions. Up the mountain, there is a magical place surrounded by snow, but there is a hot spring and the heat is rising. The third lady of Xuanhuan Mountain and a mountain goddess who fell into the Yuanshan temple are splashing water and playing with each other here. They are all beautiful with white and tender skin, like jade cream condensed fat. After the two sides chased and laughed, the two snow-white ketone bodies were entangled together like weeping. The water in the hot spring is churning, like two white snakes dancing in the water. A young Taoist squatted not far away, craned his neck, widened his eyes and pricked up his ears, but he silently said, "See no evil and hear no evil." After saying goodbye to Bai Mao outside the town, the sword-backed boy walked alone in the darkness, came to a dead tree, and looked at the Xuanhuan mountain where the two mountains nestled. It is a pity that limited by the realm of the avatar of the talisman, it is impossible to see it, and the divine powers of the earth, such as shrinking the mountains and rivers and watching the mountains and rivers in the palm, have become extravagant hopes. This is also the reason why he did not go straight to the small town at the foot of the mountain before. If he encounters an accident, it means that the entire great formation will be lost, and he must try his best not to conflict with the earth immortal cultivator. Mountain spirit water monsters, especially the descendants of Jialong, actually have two ways of enlightenment. One is the most common way of walking through water, and the other is relatively uncommon and rare, that is, Panshan. Choose a dragon vein with abundant spiritual energy and a stable situation, entrenched in it, slowly refining the root of the mountain, and absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and feng shui soil transportation. It's just that this cultivation path has a high threshold and requires far more blood than the average mountain monster. He looked at one place and said with a smile, "The girl who is not surnamed Lu, why hide her figure? They are all friends." In the field of vision, the oil paper umbrella first appeared out of thin air, and then a pair of embroidered shoes was slowly revealed. Finally there was the headless female ghost. Compared with splashing mopping, she had an extra package on her body at the moment. The sword-backed boy smiled and said, "The girl has followed her all the way here, is there something wrong?" She gave 1,000 blessings, took off the package and opened it. It turned out to be the head of a woman with delicate eyebrows. She put the head on the neck and then apologized with a full face. "There was a young sword immortal on the way earlier. When I got to the town there were so many people, so I never had the chance to be alone with Mr. Chin, so I had to do this. When Mr. Chin was alone by the well, just because the nearby alleys happened to be where the cavalry settled, I still didn't want to dare to show up. By the way, young Master Chin, my surname is Zhou, and Chiu with the word Chiu next to the wooden character. You can just call him by his first name, it's his real name." The boy nodded with a smile. "I don't know what Miss Zhou has to do with me?" Now that the headless female ghost has a head, she is a little uncomfortable looking at it. Zhou Qi blinked his long eyes in autumn water. "Young Master Chen said earlier, if I go to the Wudao school of Shujian Lake, will I have a chance?" The sword-backed boy was silent for a moment, a little embarrassed. "Nonsense." Zhou Qi shook his head. "I believe Qin Gongzi didn't talk nonsense." The boy smiled and said, "Why?" She smiled sweetly. Women's intuition. The young man didn't seem to be in a hurry to get to the bottom of the matter. Why did the other party sneakily follow him out of the town? Instead he pointed to Xuanhuan Mountain and asked curiously, "Does Miss Zhou know the roots of Zhao and Yu?" Zhou Qiu nodded and said, "One python and one fox, both of them are born in the mountains and wild. They are very famous and ordinary monks do not dare to provoke them. The two sides are bounded by a big river. In 100 years, there has been Jianghu poisonous python. Jianghu has the demon fox said that it was only later that they found out that the two sides had already become Taoist companions. When the war ended, the two princes would each occupy the mountain as kings, repairing the broken hills. Especially Yu Fujian did not know what kind of magical means he had used. Was able to relocate Wuding Mountain here, snuggle up with Zuiyuan Mountain, and said it was a dowry to the outside world. In fact. Speaking of which, Zhou Qiu was a little hard to say. The young man was an old river and lake and said indifferently, "The two mountains are like mating ends." Zhou Qiuxiao was surprised, but now that the situation is urgent, she can't help but be suspicious, she said with determination. "But it is rumored that Zhao Fujian is actually from an orthodox fairy mansion, so he can suppress his nature and ill will by virtue of Taoism. In Yuanshan, there has been a hidden cave with heavy restrictions since ancient times. There are stone walls and cliff carvings. There once left a mysterious content similar to prophecy, the poisonous fog flying kites, the fishy wind and the white python plate, once turned into a flood and returned to the sea, only the old man remained in the mountain. The ancient tree at the gate of the town is a prototype of Zhao Fujian's dragon horn. The snake slough seen by ordinary sages is actually a trick, and the rest are similar. The saying that the dragon's chi entangles the ancient tree, and the hot spring in the falling kite mountain often has rainbow light coming out of the waste pond, but it's just a rumor that Zhao Fujian deliberately let people go out for a walk. The boy wondered, "Miss Zhou knows so much?" Zhou Qiu hesitated, "I'm a spy." As soon as these words came out, the two were silent. In fact, Zhou Qiu had been waiting for the other party to inquire about her intentions, but it turned out that the other party seemed not interested at all, so she couldn't just waste time. She had to take the initiative to say, "We can't leave the Xuanhuan mountain boundary, so I thought of asking Qin Gongzi to help me take a little benefactor, take him out of this place and then go north, go to the capital of Qingxing Kingdom, or go south. Us. There are some unspeakable hidden things. Please forgive me for not being able to tell young Master Qin in detail." The straw shoe boy said, "Miss Zhou, am an old river and lake. If it were you, would you like to be involved in such a thing in such a poor place?" Zhou Qiu said, "I implore young Master Qin to believe that we have absolutely no malicious or sinister intentions." She took 2 coins out of her sleeve bag, a bag of xiaoshu money, a bag of snow money. The former is a reward and the latter is a toll for the person who is in our favor. Qin Gongzi only needs to take him away from the Xuanhuan mountain boundary, and then part ways. Thereafter that young Master Qin just went his own way. This person who is kind to us is life or death, but by destiny, it has nothing to do with young Master Qin. The young man smiled and said, "Even if I'm stupid I can trust you, but you can trust me like that?" Zhou Qiu sighed quietly, "It's really impossible." The young man nodded and said, "Miss Zhou's words are the truth and I like to hear them more. Okay, I'll pay with one hand and pay with the other hand. I'm away from home, there are many friends and many paths. This time I'll take it." Zhou Qiu threw out the 2 bags of immortal money. She turned her head to look not far away and said softly, "Qingni, come out. You heard everything, just leave here with young Master Qin and don't come back in the future." It is also an umbrella holder, but it is a person from the sun, not a ghost. Obviously these 2 oil paper umbrellas have the effect of blinding the eyes. Zhou Qi waved goodbye to him without giving the other party a chance to speak. She disappeared in a flash. A dark boy with red eyes, biting his lip, closed the oil paper umbrella and held it in his hand. The 2 looked at each other. They were about the same age and size. The dark-skinned boy also carried a cotton wrap. The dark-skinned boy had a hoarse voice and took the initiative to ask, "Listen to Sister Zhou, you are a master of all corners. A 4-level martial artist, he has a concept." The sword-backed boy nodded and said, "Correct me, I'm not an ordinary master, I'm a serious martial arts master. Ordinary people from all corners of the world who are not good at learning skills, can't go to a small town at all, let alone a small town." That small town boy just chatted with this man named Qin Ren, and he was a little annoyed. "Sister Zhou and them, did you really see the wrong person?" He sighed, "My name is Qingni Cyan Green Muddy Mud, not that intimacy." The sword-carrying boy waved his hand, "It's a pseudonym, even the surname is ignored. You don't need to explain it to me like this, and my nobleman forgets things so much that I can't remember it." Qingni choked for a moment. Qin Ren asked, "Why did you close the oil paper umbrella but don't open it so that you can hide your figure?" Qingni hesitated for a moment, then explained, "I don't have enough spiritual energy. It's already the limit to get here from the small town." The sword-backed boy began to move. After a while, Qingni stopped and said in shock, "Aren't we staying away from Xuanhuan Mountain? Why did we return to the town?" Qin Ren said angrily, "You didn't see that your elder sister Zhou was already determined to die, and was planning to go to justice generously?" Qingni stood on the spot. Qin Ren turned his head and said with a smile, "So afraid of death? Did Zhou Qi raise a little white-eyed wolf?" In the end, Qingni still didn't scold. The sword-backed boy walked straight forward, his arms crossed his chest. "Follow up, what are you afraid of? Go back to the small town, it's just a Xuanhuan mountain, a little evil spirits, nothing more, talking and laughing in ashes." Qingni's face was pale and colorless. The very heroic young man with a sword on his back suddenly looked flustered. One bowed and rushed forward, jumped towards the grass on the side of the road, waved vigorously and shouted in a low voice, "No, there are ghosts passing by. Hurry up and hide." Seeing that the green mud was still stunned, he had to swear and jump up, grab the dark boy's neck and throw it to the side of the road. He was about to fall into the grass like a cloud and was about to fall heavily into the grass, but Qin Ren grabbed his shoulder and let it go gently. In the end, the 2 of them lay on the back of a small dirt together, and Qin Ren reminded in a low voice, "Little fool, if you can open the oil paper umbrella, hurry up, if you can't, hold your breath, don't reveal the young energy of the living, these ghosts are fierce, the most sensitive to this, don't implicate me." Qingyan stretched out his hand and wrapped his neck around his neck. It hurt a little and said in a muffled voice, "You don't need to teach me." He grew up in a small town and is most familiar with how to deal with ghosts. More than a dozen ghosts beat gongs and drums, leading a guy who looked like a general in armor, saw the footprints on the ground and sniffed again. It suddenly shouted, "Who? Get out and die." Kingna's heart tightened and she didn't know where to show her motives. Logically speaking, according to the formula taught to her by Sister Zhou, she would never reveal her yang energy. The dark-haired boy turned his head to look, and was immediately stunned. I saw that guy with the sword on his back was almost crawling on the ground, and he had already escaped several feet away. It was really fast. In the blink of an eye, Kusama rustled and disappeared. Is this guy going to leave him alone? Just receive the money, just let it go by yourself? Don't the books say that the Dardists are all heroes who sacrifice their lives? Taking a step back, how much should I talk about morality and courtesy and shame? Qingni had no way to hide, no way to escape, so he had to get up the courage to stand up. According to Sister Zhou, Qingni did not have the qualifications to practice martial arts, and only learned some three-legged cat kung fu to strengthen her body. The key is to deal with ghosts, which is meaningless. And that Uncle Lu said that people who practice martial arts, if they don't have the upper body of boxing, they are all empty talk. It's okay to deal with a few market ruffians, and it's okay to use them to kill demons and hunt ghosts. The dark-skinned boy took out a few small scrolls from his sleeves, and with a sudden trembling, he spread out 4 small hanging statues. Stop in the air. With Kingna's hand, he really frightened the ghosts who had already turned on their weapons. The sword-carrying boy squatted in the grass and rubbed his chin. This little girl who goes by the pseudonym Qingni was really a chi trainer, but it was only a situation as if he had deliberately delayed the breakthrough. It's not hard to guess, there is no suitable way to practice ghost Taoism. In that town with a lot of yin and ghosts, a chi trainer, a big living person, open a house casually, and absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, it is difficult to peel off the cocoon. Get rid of those ferocious and turbid chi, the foundation is unstable, and it is easy to be flooded by the tide in several places of life chi. Just when he saw the 4 portraits he was a little dumbfounded. There is that sect of the gods, Qijin Qi Tianjun, an old Taoist immortal, who used to be a celestial master from one continent in the past. There are also 2 portraits of Yuan and Chao painted door gods that once covered the door at the foot of Yizhou Mountain. To say that these 3 were used by the green mud to frighten demons, ghosts, and ward off evil spirits. Although it was useless, it was reasonable. Just the last portrait, a young man in a green shirt and a sword. Qin Pingan was speechless for a while and rubbed his brows. I saw the 4 hanging statues surrounding the young man, slowly rotating, with a certain appearance and a bit of fairy style. And the passing ghost was full of vigilance at first, and was really afraid of encountering a monk on the mountain, and then saw the shaky swarthy youth and began to laugh and laugh. Night. If these few hanging statues really work, wouldn't it be possible to carry the hanging statues of the 3 sect patriarchs with you? After just a moment, the leading ghost felt like it was struck by lightning, shook his head and was about to kneel as soon as his knees became weak, and he randomly chopped a few knives, and he waved his knife and ran, and all of a sudden he disappeared. The figure disappeared, and the rest of the minions saw that the opportunity was not good, and instantly dispersed as birds and beasts. Qingni sat on the ground slumped, and hurriedly put the 4 small scrolls into his sleeves. I was laughed at by Sister Zhou and Uncle Lu before, never thought it would really work. Qing and I turned his head to look at the with the sword on his back, and was walking towards him slowly, patted the weeds on his head and the dirt on his body as he walked, nodded and said, I never thought you were still a chi practitioner. Only 1 foot has stepped on the mountain, which is gratifying. From now on we will meet each other as Taoist friends. Qingni, good name and Dao name. I know a Dao name that is only 1 character away from yours, and the realm is quite high. In fact, Qin Pingan also thought it was funny. Just because the hanging statue was only a few steps away from him, the real person and the righteous master, there was a line of traction invisibly. Qing and I gritted his teeth and said, How do you say, are you going back to the town? Qin Pingan smiled and said, Listen to your Sister Zhou, stay away from right and wrong. I just tried to test your courage. The dark boy silently followed the unreliable guy. Even if Sister Zhou was wrong, he would never be able to walk out of the Xuanhuan Mountains alive by himself. Along the way, almost every 7 or 80 miles, there is a dojo where big monsters are evil or ghosts, which is extremely dangerous. At the end of last winter, Sister Zhou escorted herself to the border of Xuanhuan Mountain once while taking advantage of the heavy snow. As a result, Sister Zhou was keenly aware of a hidden aura, but could not determine the location of the other party, so they had to go back the same way. There is no way. Sister Zhou and the others are in the Xuanhuan Mountains, and they have made too many enemies. In fact, they don't care if they leave Xuanhuan Mountain. Instead, they like to accompany Sister Zhou and the others, but Sister Zhou always says that she has a good life and should travel far away. In the distance, a man in armor stretched out his hand to touch the stubble. What kind of expert is this? She was also helpless. Maybe it's because I'm not good at counting hexagrams, but this is the end of the matter, so be a dead horse and a living horse, doctor. The man nodded. There's nothing we can do, we can only leave it to fate. This girl looks like a lucky girl and I think she will be able to get out of this place alive. Now it was Zhou Qiu's turn to be surprised. Do you really feel relieved to hand her over to this person? He nodded. Just take a gamble. As far as your gambling luck is concerned, don't you always lose money? Because the gambling table keeps losing, I believe there will always be a win outside the gambling table. By the way, Lu Biaochang, why did those ghosts retreat by themselves? Did you take action? The man shook his head. Strange thing. I thought it was your trick. Don't keep up with the distance? There will be a difference. Besides, I believe in the results of your hexagram. The two juveniles who met by chance did not speak to each other, and walked one after the other for about half an hour. A young Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown squatted by a river to wash his face, with a large pile of clothes under his arm. He hurriedly threw it on the ground, stood up, and trotted towards the boy with the sword. Qin Pingan stopped and frowned. Lu Qin sighed and shook his head. Obviously, the existence that Headmaster Lu is looking for is not the juvenile, who goes by the pseudonym Qingni. Since that existence is in Aquarius, then a young hidden official, Ma Xuanhuan, who has returned to his hometown, or Guqin, may encounter it. Moreover, their possibilities are much greater than that of ordinary Qi practitioners. As long as it is deeply entangled with the wild world and the demon clan, the more likely it is. So this is the reason why Lu Qin took the initiative to find Qin Pingan. But this is only a possibility. Heaven is impermanent and things are unpredictable. Qin Pingan didn't explain anything to Qingni either and asked, the gust of wind that splashed Mofeng earlier, was it your fault? Lu Qin said aggrieved, how is it possible? That's it. Qin Pingan reminded, Lu Qin, you will look for it next time, remember not to meet me next time, there are only 3 things. First, there is the scattered flower beach in the Jade Mountain, and the Pomo Peak in the boundary of the Xuanhuan Mountains, as well as this place. Lu Qin began to change the subject and said with a smile, when someone evaluates your calligraphy, you can judge your calligraphy by printing. You lose in lack of talent and you win in hard work. Qin Pingan nodded and said, it's a very objective evaluation. Lu Qin turned his head to look at the dark girl. The girl smiled and said, good fortune, I can make Pindao and Qin Shanzhu protect the Dao for you together. The girl was in a very bad mood at the moment, she almost blurted out, what kind of onion are you? But she held back after thinking about it. Qin Pingan asked in his heart, which senior on the mountain is that in the Qingming world? Lu Qin sold out, an expert with high realm, high temperament and high vision. Qin Pingan glanced at the girl's satchel, which contained the waist badge of the Deli Scout Jingqi. The reason why I became a heroic spirit here, but I still lingered, why didn't I go home and avoid the kiln smoke? It must be because of my obsession, and there are only 2 words, kill the demon. Lu Qin wrapped his arms around his sleeves and said slowly, Pindao guessed the real reason. The girl Zhou said there was something unspeakable, so it must have been a little twisted. Qin Pingan said, Master Lu, please send Qingni away from the Xuanhuan Mountains. I will go back to the small town and settle her in the Xianxia Inn in the capital of Qingxing Kingdom. Lu Qin smiled and said, why is it so troublesome, let's go back to the town together for the 3 of us. Qin Pingan was silent and Lu Qin smiled and said, you might as well listen to the poor Taoist. For fortune-telling, I think Miss Zhou is not as proficient as the poor Taoist. Qin Pingan hesitated for a while but nodded. Lu Qin and the dark girl grinned and said, fellow Taoist Qingni, you can kill the 14 realms by joining forces with the 2 of us. Qingni asked curiously, this Taoist priest, what are the 14 realms? According to Sister Zhou, the world outside is full of wonders, but isn't the realm of martial arts not the highest talent on the mountain, and the Qi practitioners on the mountain are superb? Lu Qin said solemnly, don't understand the 14th realm? It's just 14 one-level Qi practitioners. The girl looked at the young Taoist who was hanging around, and then at the boy with the sword who ran away when he was in trouble, and felt that it was not without reason that they could become friends. Lu Qin smiled and said, a gust of wind on the top of the mountain pulled out so many red lines of cause and effect outside the mountain. The implication, of course, is that Qin Pingan agreed to participate in the King Xingwu viewing ceremony. At Nujiadu, Qin Pingan just nodded with nothing to do with good or evil. Thousands of miles away, the entire Xuanhuan Mountains have their own joys and sorrows, perhaps it is self-inflicted, it may be self-made or it may be fate. Qin Pingan took out the vermilion wine gourd and just drank it. Lu Qin turned his head and asked, young Taoist Qingni, Who do you think is the youngest and most handsome of the gods in the previous 4 portraits? Before Qingni could answer this idiot's question, he saw that the sword-carrying boy raised his hand and punched, and the young Taoist flew out on the spot. Qingyan, who was startled, said in a trembling voice, "Did you hit that long temple with your punch? Is he really okay?" The sword-backed boy said angrily, "I saw it wrong, it's Tianling Gai, and the Taoist priest has directly proclaimed the Daoan sword." Qingni was worried about whether the person was injured. She turned her head to look again, only to hear the young Taoist snort softly, and a carp kicked up, but he failed to get up and fell to the ground again. The Taoist had to stretch out his hands to support the ground. "Get up, shake your shoulders vigorously, and scatter all over the dust." The Taoist priest seemed to be fine, and he didn't care about the punch with the sword-carrying youth at all, and asked, "Young fellow Taoist Qingni, are you very familiar with Qi Tianjun of the Divine Gathering sect? It's such a coincidence that Pindao also has some connections with him." The girl was a little relieved and said with a stern face, "I am very familiar with Qi Tianjun, but Qi Tianjun is not familiar with me." The Taoist priest wearing the lotus crown slapped his fist. "It's a coincidence, isn't it? Qi Tianjun is very familiar with Pindao, and Pindao is not familiar with Qi Tianjun." The girl frowned and said, "Taoist said the opposite?" Lu Qin rubbed his chin, pretending to be contemplative. "Young Taoist Qingni, what do you think of my brother Chen's character and appearance? Is it worthy of the term young and 10,000 pockets?" "Ah." Lu Qin wrapped his hands around his neck and stretched his waist. "If anyone knows that spring will come and go, unless you ask for a bird outside the cage." Sword of Coming Chapter 10:16. The journey was safe and sound. Qingni took the 2 strange people who seemed to be picked up from the inside and returned to the town smoothly. Maybe the sneaky and dirty place in the eyes of outsiders is lovable in the eyes of the girl. When she returned to the town, the thin girl obviously she relaxed a lot and her footsteps were a little light. Previously she followed the sword-backed boy in the wilderness. Qingni's body was obviously a little stiff, and her heartstrings were tense all the time. Maybe she was born and raised here. In other words, there is a day and night difference between a familiar town and an unfamiliar world outside. The young Taoist asked, "Young Taoist Qingni, does the town have a name?" Fenglu. In the past, soldiers fought for war, but now the 4 seasons are all lovely. This Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown is wearing a heavy cotton robe, which is only knee-length, and a cloth strip is tied to the calf. It is probably due to the lack of official roads in the Xuanhuan Mountains, and there are some thorns on the leggings. Barb. The girl is more worried at the moment, or she is afraid that when she returns to her residence later, Sister Zhou will be angry. Don't look at Sister Zhou's gentleness and kindness. She usually speaks in a soft voice, but after spending time with each other year after year, the girl has long discovered that in fact Uncle Lu and the others are all in awe of Sister Zhou. After 7 turns and 8 turns, Qingni led the young Taoist priest and the sword-backed boy into a dark alley. On the way she occasionally turned her head to look back, and saw that Taoist priest was a thief. Was he stepping on the spot? Zhou Qiu, who was holding an umbrella and embroidered shoes, appeared at the corner of the 2 alleys, frowning slightly. "Why are you back?" The thin and dark girl twisted the corners of her clothes and pursed her lips. She thought of some lame excuses along the way. When she saw Sister Zhou, the girl would not want to lie. Fortunately, the sword-carrying youth helped open the siege and explained, "I was under the tree before, and from the moment I accepted the money this trip was accepted, but I didn't say when I would set off for the journey, Miss Zhou. I promised to take the green mud. Just bring out the Xuanhuan Mountains with all the beards and tails and jumping around. If Miss Zhou doesn't believe me, I can swear here, if Qingni loses a single hair in the town tonight, I will be by my side." This Taoist Lu, who claims to be my close friend and relative, cut off his dog's head, apologized to Miss Zhou, and apologized. Taoist Lu looked dazed. "Ha!" Zhou Qiu suppressed his anger and asked, "Who is this?" The young Taoist hurriedly turned his head, coughed a few times, moistened his throat, made a bow and said loudly, "Xiao Dao is Lu. He is proficient in measuring characters and drawing lots, especially good at reading palmistry. The price is fair, and the old man has nothing to do with it. Bully, don't accept the money." A man in armor walked out from behind Zhou Qiu, his palm resting on the hilt of the waist knife. When he saw this scene he was reluctant to scold the silly girl, and he couldn't say anything in person, so he could only complain in his heart. "Zhou Qiu, talk about it yourself. Look, what kind of business is this?" Zhou Qiu also had 2 big heads and said in his heart, "Blame me, I found the wrong person." The man asked, "It really doesn't work, so I'll go to old man Qi for help?" Zhou Qiu said, "Let's talk about it when I talk to them." The man reminded, Don't delay for too long. Zhou Qi touched the girl's head. I'm usually so obedient, how come it's a critical moment, and am making a fool of myself instead? Qingyi whispered, home is here, Sister Zhou, Uncle Lu, you are all here and you are reluctant to leave. Zhou Qiu smiled bitterly and said nothing, and led them to a simple but clean house. The girl put down the messenger bag and knew the way. She went to the kitchen to take out the white bowl, took the gourd and spooned out the glutinous rice wine from the wine jar. The four of them sat around a small table in the courtyard. After Qingyi brought the wine bowl to the table, she did not serve the table. She poured herself a bowl of glutinous rice wine and sat on the threshold of the kitchen door. The man with a sword smiled and said, My name is Lu Tai. I believe that young Master Chen and Taoist Lu have seen it. They are no longer from the world. The two of them don't care about this and they are willing to drink at the same table. Respect the two of them first. Both the sword-backed boy and the young Taoist priest held up their wine bowls, and Lu Tai drank it all. Zhou Qiu didn't drink, so he pushed his wine bowl to the man in armor. Qin Pingan asked, Where is Brother Lu from? Listening to the accent, it doesn't look like someone from Qingxing country. Lu Tai said, It's from the north. Lu Chen smiled and asked, Which is north of Dadu? Lu Tai shook his head and said, Master Lu is joking. To the north of that Dadu is the Dali dynasty. Lu Chen praised, The realm of Xiaodao may not be high but his eyes are very accurate. At first glance, Brother Lu is a strong general on the battlefield. Lu Tai was stunned for a while, but Zhou Qiu's face was as usual. The girl over there at the door wondered, Isn't it arrogant? Is this condescending Taoist priest an ignorant and incompetent scholar? The sword-backed boy smiled and said, Is it possible that you read a fake character? Lu Chen didn't feel embarrassed at all, and wiped the corner of his mouth with his thumb. Which mountain is Brother Lu currently living in? Xiaodao heard that the two mountains, Zuiyuan and Wuding, each have military camps, and they are both strong and strong. If you don't have the ability to get a school captain, the eyes of the stewards of the two governments will grow on their buttocks. Lu Tai smiled, I can't climb high. I don't talk about these unpleasant things, I still have something to do, so I will stay soon. After drinking 2 bowls of wine, Lu Tai said goodbye and left. Zhou Qi got up to see them off, went out to the alley and smiled bitterly. There is a cave mansion cultivation base, a Qi trainer cooperates with a pure martial artist, and the confidence to Qingyi to leave this place is even greater. Unexpectedly, this Taoist priest has a stagnant breathing in the town, and the breath is quite turbid. Obviously he can't adapt to the small town for a while. The evil aura on the side is definitely not a cultivator of the Middle Five realm. Zhou Qiu was both a spy and a military cultivator during his lifetime. Therefore Lu Tai's dozen or so cavalry, whether during his lifetime or after his death, were very convinced of Zhou Qiu. Qin Pingan asked, What's the little girl's real name? The dark girl sitting over the threshold was speechless. How did she find out her gender? Zhou Qiu said with a smile, and I Qing turn around and take the homonym. The young Taoist asked, What's your surname? Zhou Qiu said with a smile, Master Lu is of Taoism. Haven't you read the great master and Qiushui of that Taoist master? An eye who knows no clues, knows right and wrong and cannot be divided into small ones. Not to mention a Haigong master like Lu Daochang, it seems that even a cultivator outside of Taoism, or even an ordinary master of a scholarly family, should know these 2 sentences, right? Lu Daochang was anxious. Xiaodao just hasn't read any of the chapters, so why is she a fake Taoist? Did Miss Zhou bully Xiaodao from a poor family and didn't read much? Qin Pingan twitched the corners of his mouth and took a sip of the glutinous rice wine, which was not as good as Dong Shuijing's wine. Zhou Qiu smiled and said, The level of the Dao is not about the endorsement. Chief Lu Dao, the Taoist sighed and said, What kind of person is this person? How can he make Miss Zhou so familiar? Qin Pingan said, It's almost there. Lu Chen had to stop the bragging that he had already written, changed the subject, looked at the thin and dark girl, smiled and said, An I Qing good name, the sun rises and Etian and I the autumn air is strong and chilling. The fresh air is great and the vegetation is withered. In fact, Qingyi is also a good name, Qingyi Zio Jianghuan, wind and snow thousands of mountains. The real name is An I Qing and the Taoist name is Qingni. Zhou Qiu had doubts in his heart, because just based on the sentence sunrise and Etian and I, this Taoist priest surnamed Lu must have read the Great Master and Autumn Water. She glanced at the sword-backed boy who sat down to drink and kept his mouth shut, and then at the young Taoist priest who drank 7 or 8 sips without drinking a drink or two. One of them was not astonishing and he was so eloquent. Hippie Smiley so curious. No wonder the 2 friends can get together? Zhou Qiu said, Master Lu. It really couldn't be delayed any longer. The rainbow light and the sword light that lit up over the Momo Peak were just greeting her. The young Taoist hurriedly said, "Just call Brother Lu." Zhou Qi turned a deaf ear and said, "What kind of place is Fengla Town? I think you two have a lot, especially tonight is the day of the wedding banquet in Xuanhuan Mountain. The fish and dragons are mixed, and the level of danger is far greater than usual. Lu Tai and I have a personal grudge. The solution, but the odds of winning are not high. I know it is impossible to do it. Naturally, there are reasons for it. There is no need for the two of you to ask. It is only because I am destined to take care of Enai Qing, so I will find Qin Gongzi earlier. Enai Qing took him out of the Xuanhuan Mountains, away from this place of right and wrong. After I became a ghost, I lived in Enai Qing's ancestral house. Later, Lu Tai and the others also settled in this alley. Over the years, some ghosts have the things that shouldn't be done are actually Enai Qing's help. Repaying kindness and revenge is the right thing to do, so I urge the two of you to take Enai Qing out of Fengla Town quickly. Bet Dart, I can give you an extra amount of fairy money." Chen Pingan pointed to Lu Qin. "I had planned to go to the capital of Qingxing Kingdom. You wanted to go back. I swore that when Enai Qing returned to the town, there would be an opportunity waiting for her." Zhou Qiu looked at the Taoist priest. Unexpectedly, the Taoist priest had already turned to his side, facing the gate of the courtyard, not looking at Miss Zhou. Zhou Qi was helpless, so he had to wait for news from Lu Tai and ask the old man surnamed Qi to help him, and let the master of the golden body and realm find someone to send Enai Qing out of the town. There are a few in the hospital, and the next step is to drink and not speak. Lu Tai soon brought an old man and a woman here. Zhou Qi stood up and cupped his hands. "Senior Qi, Miss Lu." The old man's surname is Qi Mingsong. He is the chief guest secretary of the Zhang clan in Tianqiao County, and a warrior with a golden body. The last time the cultivator Zhang encountered a wall here, it was Qi Song who was in charge of the rear of the palace, and the greater damage was avoided. The two sides shouted drums to withdraw their troops. Only Qi Song walked to the town at the foot of the mountain alone. Fu Yang and Yu Chuanji also didn't want to fight to the end with an old man who was in martial arts, so they let the other party live at the foot of the mountain. In the spring of this year, another direct disciple of Qi Song came. Although she was a woman, she was the extremely ruthless martial artist has made many shots in Fengla Town. This girl named Lu Mo in her 30s, is already at the peak of the 5 realms of martial arts. It is said that the Qingxing Kingdom wants to recruit her to serve Forbidden Army instructor. Qi Song was a chubby old man with a halberd beard and a frog belly. He was smiling. He saw the cotton-robed Taoist priest and the straw-shoe boy. The young Taoist waved his hand vigorously and said with a smile, "The visitor is a guest, so what are you doing? There is no shortage of wine at home." That Lu Mo is not as slender and plump as Miss Zhou. At first glance he really doesn't look like a trainer, but more like a pampered lady from a wealthy family. The Taoist priest Fang Kai was staring at the door of the hospital, and the first person who came into view was not the woman's profile. The Taoist winked at Lu Tai. "Hey, it turns out that Brother Lu likes to eat pork belly that is both fat and thin." Lu Tai was like a cloud, and he just pretended he didn't see the strange face of Taoist Lu. Enai Qing moved 2 benches from the main house, and Sister Zhou and Uncle Lu, the master and the apprentice, sat on one each. Zhou Qi said bravely, "Young Master Chen, Taoist Lu, I won't go around in circles with you. Lu Tai has already negotiated with Senior Qi and Miss Lu, and Miss Lu will personally go out and Enai Qing all the way out of the town." Chen Pingan nodded, only saying a good word, and then there was no movement. Lu Chen felt that he was thin-skinned, so he could only remind in a low voice, "Brother Chen, I don't have any eyesight. Miss Zhou is implying that you take out 2 bags of immortal money." Chen Pingan squinted. "It's none of your business." Lu Chen was so anxious that he almost pinched his feet. "Don't be stunned, a bag of snow will pay for Master Qi and Sister Lu as darts, and a bag of xiaoshu will be returned to Miss Zhou." Qi Song laughed, reaching out and gently stroking her bulging belly. Lu Mo frowned slightly. Where did these 2 swindlers appear? The young man surnamed Chen really has the 4 realms of martial arts? Zhou Qi smiled and said, "Perhaps Lu Daochang has misremembered. That bag of xiaoshu money is the fee for escorting darts that I agreed with young Master Chen." "My brother, this is all a lie. Didn't you say you only earn a bag of snow money earlier?" The young Taoist opened his eyes wide, then his face was full of eagerness to try, his eyes were hot, and he rubbed his hands and said, "People are fortune and birds are killed for food. Usually their heads are tied to the belt of trousers. A bag of xiaoshu money. This dart Pindao took it. Not Lao Sister Lu is driving." Lu Mo's face was expressionless. He picked up the wine bowl but turned the toe of his shoe gently. Suddenly the young Taoist flew out with a bench. She was a little surprised. The Taoist was so weak? She had to turn her wrist. A gust of wind cleverly passed between the Taoist priest and the wall. The young Taoist fell to the ground, got up, put his hands on his hips, raised the other hand and said in a trembling voice, "It's okay. It's just a small thing, it's a small thing, it's a small thing." The sword-carrying boy was indifferent to this, just raised his head and said, "Miss Lu is so rash and tempted, isn't she afraid of hitting hard nails? Or is it that the guest King Wufu of the Zhang family in Tianqiao County has such a fierce temper?" Chi Song nodded and smiled and said, "Harmony makes money and harmony makes money." Luomo quickly apologized to Taoist Lu. Xiaoyuqin is right, be kind to others when you go out, don't always think that the whole world is a ghost with ill-conceived minds. Luomo got up and clasped his fists and said, "What a sin." The young Taoist priest carried the small bench, staggered back to his original position and said with a grin, "The family doesn't speak two languages, and the beating is kissing and scolding, it is love, Sister Lu." The young Taoist's expression suddenly changed as he spoke in decent words. The little girl dared to be so presumptuous with the Taoist, watching the dart. With a stride, smashing the bench as a hidden weapon at Luomo. As a result, the ghostly figure walked around the table in a few steps, grabbed the bench with one hand, threw it on the ground, and then came to the Taoist priest. An elbow hit him on the chest, and the Taoist priest lifted his feet off the ground. He fell into the main house of the house on the side of the air, slammed his back against the edge of the 8 immortals table, squeaked, fell a dog and ate shit, and lay on the mud floor in the house. "Brother Chin, save me." The sword-carrying boy took out 2 bags of fairy money and threw them on the table. "If you like to take care of things, take them." Zhou Qi glanced at the 2 bags of money on the table, her eyebrows stood upright, took a deep breath, and finally managed to hold back, without opening her mouth to explain the mystery. Rin escorted An Qing back to the town toll. Luomo put the bag of Xiaoshu money into his sleeve, then threw another bag of fairy money to An Qing and said with a smile, "Little girl, we can go on our way." Zhou Qiu said, "Lu Tai him for a ride." The man in armor put down the wine bowl. An Qing hesitated. Seeing that Sister Zhou showed signs of anger, he had to pick up the oil paper umbrella and the package again, and left the house with the woman. Looking back, Sister Zhou nodded at her, and the young man with the sword was drinking with a straight face. The Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown, lying on the threshold of the main house, waved at her and even laughed. Walking in the alley, the girl remembered something and reluctantly used her inner voice saying, "Uncle Lu, that Taoist Lu has a very strange crown on his head. I have never seen it in the town. I heard Sister Zhou say that a serious Taoist priest with a severance order must be well dressed and must not be arrogant. The crown is in the shape of a fishtail crown. It is a line of inheritance, but the young Taoist priest surnamed Lu is a lotus Taoist crown. Here in the town, there are also some Qi trainers who came from eccentricities, who like to dress up as Tao masters, but they don't have this kind of Tao crown." Lu Tai's expression changed slightly and he asked with a smile, "How do you say it?" And I Ching said, "The crown of Tao is like a lotus flower." Lu Tai stopped, looking complicated, hesitating for a while. If he remembers correctly, in this Aquarius Island, the only Taoist priests who are qualified to wear the lotus crown, except for a few unknown Taoist temples on Shengazong Mountain whose incense is withered, there is only the Ling Fei from the old Dashuang dynasty. Look, the previous Guanzhou Xianjun Chao Rong, only because he is the disciple of Baiyujing Lu Zhangjiao, is wearing a lotus crown and both are honored. This is still the secret story on the mountain that Lu Tai heard from Zhou Qiu. The most mysterious thing is that the young Taoist priest in Lu Tai's eyes is not wearing a Taoist crown at all. If it is said that he can't see through the blindfold, that's all. Zhou Qi is a Longmen monk with a strong family background. How can she see through? The surnamed Lu was either a bold and ignorant Shanzhe Yeshio, or a genealogical Taoist priest from Lingfei Temple. Lu Tai was thoughtful and continued to move forward, seemingly casually asking, "Miss Lu, can you see the Taoist priest's lineage and roots on the mountain?" Luomo smiled and said, "It's just a poor and sour liar, but he's really a Qi practitioner and he knows some breathing techniques to strengthen the body. I used skillful strength in the 2 strokes in front of me in the courtyard. As for being so embarrassed, I have to pretend that I don't want to. With my master's eyesight, except for the earth immortal, I can't deceive the old man. If it is really a land immortal who travels all over the world, his words and deeds will not drop in price like this." Lu Tai asked again with a heartfelt voice, "It is rumored that the Jingke faction of Old Master Cheng has the lineage of the Qingqing Peak Jingxian Temple. It has a prosperous incense and has always been as good as the Qingqing Peak. Moreover, it has some origins with the southernmost Lingfei Temple." Lu Imo was greatly amazed, and he used the martial artist's method of concentrating his voice and said with a smile, "Is Lu Biaochang so well informed that he even knows this kind of mountain insider?" The ancestor of the Jianghu school, the true Taoist lineage of the founder of the mountain, is indeed from the Lingfei temple, but for some unknown reason Jingxian and has been reluctant to talk about this matter to the outside world for hundreds of years. Flying to the palace, climbing up the relationship, not to mention publicizing it to the outside world, it is not right to hide and hide. Master guessed that the founder of Jingxian temple was probably an abandoned disciple who was driven down the mountain by Chao Rongtian, so I don't dare to mention this at all. Master knows this because he has a good relationship with the ancestor of Zhang's family in Tianqiao County, and he has nothing to say. Lu Tai clenched the handle of the knife tightly and asked the girl beside him in his heart, "And I Ching, does the Taoist priest have words to reveal his identity? Think about it carefully and don't let any clues go away." And I Ching said, "It's all unreliable and strange words such as what Qi Tianjun of Xingao sect is familiar with him, he is not familiar with Qi Tianjun, and said that if I join forces with them I can kill any 14 realms. According to Taoist priests, there are 14 one-level Qi practitioners." Lu Tai was speechless, spit and scolded the liar of the dog days and then said solemnly, "Go, let's leave the town quickly." Then he hurried back and reminded Zhou Qi that he must stay away from the Taoist priest who ate the bear's heart and the leopard's gall, as well as the boy who carried the sword. For some reason the girl felt empty in her heart. Those two weirdos who had not met for a long time, although neither of them were righteous, their words were interesting. For example, when he was resting by a river in the middle, the young man with the sword brushed off the soil, chewed the grass roots and stared at the river in a daze. Seeing that no one was there, the Taoist priest turned his head and took the initiative to talk to her, asking her if she knew why a person's left ear could hear better than his right ear, and what meant facing the lus and his back to the sky. She ignored it, and the Taoist priest took care of himself. It is explained that there are yin and yang qi between heaven and earth, the sky is clear and the earth is turbid, the earth is dirty, and there are many living things, and the left ear belongs to yang, so the heaven hears sharply, the right ear belongs to yin, and the earth hears better. In addition, there are differences between men and women. Here, the young Taoist pointed to the river with a smile, and said something that made an I Ching, who was never afraid of ghosts, feel horrified. He said that if there were floating drowned corpses in Hanoi, even if they were soaked in water beyond recognition, the people on the bank would still look at them. Men and women can be identified. Men regard their faces as yin and their backs as yang. Therefore, when a corpse floats in water, it must be facing the bottom of the water and turning its back to the sky. This is also a clue that we humans are in the dark signs. After all, the head of all spirits is not a call for nothing. On the other side of the courtyard, Zhou Qi sent Qi Song to the corner of the alley. The old man patted his abdomen lightly and said with a smile, "Since the purpose is the same, why not join hands with us?" Zhou Qi shook his head and said, "Two things." The old man sighed, "Even for personal revenge, as long as Miss Zhou is willing to reveal her identity with the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom, why wouldn't Xuanhuan Mountain refuse to hand over the monster that was tipping the bill for the wilderness?" Zhou Qi said indifferently, "There is no evidence." Qi Song hinted, "Evidence? As long as the monster falls in Miss Zhou's hands, won't it be there?" Zhou Qiu smiled. According to the military rules of the border, for the sake of selfishness, the abuse of public weapons should be executed according to the law. Seeing that she had made up her mind, Qi Song had to give up, hesitated for a moment and said, "The two people in the courtyard, whose origins are unknown, you should be careful." Back in the small courtyard, Zhou Qiu looked at the young Taoist priest who sat back in place and rubbed his waist, still stubborn. "Miss Zhou, don't look at your brother Lu who looks weak and your skeleton is not strong enough. I'm sick and alive. This is the great benefit of the God's presence where the Taoist heart is tough and the soul is fixed. As long as Miss Zhou does not dislike it, Pindao will immediately teach Miss Zhou a Daoyin technique, not to mention thunder at night you will feel palpitations. Even if you walk in the sun during the day it's okay. Come, Rong Pindao first show Miss Zhou a palmistry. What Pindao has learned is complicated, you need to prescribe the right medicine to get twice the result with half the effort." Zhou Qi waved his hand, "Master Lu has kindly accepted it. Young Master Qin, don't blame me for the expulsion order." Qin Pingan said, "Take people's money to help people eliminate disasters. Those little summer money should be regarded as the reward for Taoist Lu to solve problems for Zhou girl." Lu Qin stopped rubbing his waist. "What?" Qin Pingan said, "Zhao Fuyang and Yu Chuanji from the Xuanhuan Mountains, have they ever colluded with the savage demon clan? And did the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom know anything about concealing the report?" Don't tell me that there is no evidence. You and Lu Biaolong just have a guess in your mind. Zhou Qiu was shocked, narrowed his eyes and said slowly, "Who are you?" The conversation she had just had with Qi Song was quite far away from the house, not to mention a Qi practitioner at the Dragon Gate realm and a martial artist at the Golden Body realm. How could the two people in the courtyard be able to hear it casually? The young Taoist chief said aggrieved, "You Miss Zhou, you are missing a word. The poor Taoist is also a strong hero. The most unaccustomed to injustice in life." Qin Pingon glanced at Lu Qin, seeing money to do things. Lu Qin put down the wine bowl and burped, first muttering as if whispering to others, and then the Taoist priest shook his sleeves. Helpless is also helpless, just seeing money to do things, not taking money to do things. Who made Pindao and Qin Shanju be close friends and relatives who could drink as soon as they met? Zhou Qiu put his hands on his sleeves, wondering, is this poor and sour Taoist pretending to be a ghost? Just what's the point? After a while, a young woman with a bun appeared out of thin air on the other side of the alley. She was slender and showed a high forehead. She looked at the sword-carrying boy in the courtyard and said with a smile, "Master." End of this chapter. Sword of Coming Chapter 1017. Revisiting the old place, things are right and wrong, the past is like a dream. Shujian Lake, Sulan Island. The island owner, Tian Hujuan, who was originally in retreat, quietly left the retreat, set up a banquet in an attic on the top of the mountain, and sat opposite a young monk in a Confucian shirt and scarf. Tian Hujian's face was pale, and he didn't even dare to say a few words of greeting, just like a schoolboy who knew he was stubborn and listened to the teacher's teaching. The young man put away his thoughts and said with a smile, "Is senior brother Qin still so busy?" Since the other party was in a questioning tone, Tian Hujuan quickly and carefully thought about his words, and replied in a trembling voice, "Qin Ju and Zhao Fuyang of Xuanhuan are old acquaintances, and I and Hewanshan Fanwan Fuyuchunzi are not unfamiliar. Yuchunji once came to Xianxia Island more than 100 years ago, and the master asked me to serve the guests on my behalf. A few years ago Yu Zhen, the son of Yuchunji, also quietly traveled to Shujian Lake and visited my place. Lindao, so this time Xuanhuan Mountain invited relatives. Qin Ju couldn't shirk it, so he went to the banquet alone. I needed to retreat and I didn't want to have anything to do with Xuanhuan Mountain, so I declined the invitation. The Xuanhuan Mountain banquet is tonight." Hold. It should be answered honestly, but Tian Hujun will never say any unnecessary words, for fear of superfluous and unintelligible. For example, Xuanhuan Mountain, which now calls itself Xiashujian Lake. Tian Hujun dared to say one more word? She hated that Yuchuanji so much in her heart for a while. She was so immortal, how could she know such a number one auntie? The young man took a sip of wine. It was the woody wine he bought from Chishui City on a special trip before he landed on the island. He joked, "More than 100 years ago? A few years ago?" It seems that senior sister Tian's speech is still so vague. Tian Hujuan turned pale in an instant, and hurriedly reported 2 accurate numbers. The young man raised his palm, wiped his mouth and nose with the palm of his hand and said casually, "Senior sister, don't be so nervous, it's just called the Little Book Jane Lake, but it's not the real Book Jane Lake, not to mention the real Book Jane Lake, now it's not just senior sister and me." Under his ass. The slugs of the Mud Bottle Alley in the past are now Gu Kan in the White Emperor City. He left Shujian Lake many years ago, and now he has just returned to Aquarius Continent from the wild world. Gu Kan asked for no reason. Master didn't agree to Lu Laoqing succeeding as the 4th sect master of the True Realm sect. Is it because he has the ambition to start a sect of his own, or is he afraid or hiding? Tian Hujan's heart seemed to have been hit by a heavy hammer, and he was almost out of breath. It was the last time that Master brought her to visit Jianghu, and she heard something that she shouldn't have heard. Otherwise she wouldn't have to pretend she didn't know about Gu Kan's question. Senior sister didn't do anything wrong, so why be so nervous? There is no silver tail here. If I didn't know what senior sister is like, I would be suspicious of senior sister. Gu Kan put down the wine glass, stood up and stood by the railing. The pair of flower cups on the table should be a congratulatory gift wishing senior sister a successful retreat and becoming a nascent soul in the future, not a fake. Tian Hujuan followed and got up. Gu Kan said, "Zenji is similar to Lu Kaisang of Oriole Island, so they may not be friends, but they are not quite the same in my heart compared to senior sister Tian and senior brother Qin. Senior sister Tian remembered to take care of her a lot and became the empress of nascent soul. During the next 100 years and hundreds of years of cultivation, she would help Zenji to do 1 or 2 things that helped Zenji in the snow. As for the icing on the cake, I don't want to owe senior sister's favor for this kind of thing. At that time, when Zenji is around, someone will naturally remind senior sister Tian to help out and help the Wudao faction to tide over the difficulties, so senior sister does not need to think about when and how to make a move. Tian Hujuan not only did not have a heavy heart, but heaved a sigh of relief and said softly, "I have no shirk, I will do my best." Guken smiled and said, "Senior sister Tian is still the same. She speaks decisive words and does things as light as a feather." Tian Hujan's scalp was numb. Guken said, "But he's better than me." This time he escaped from the wild world. He went to a certain ferry and met Song Pangchai, who was already the king of Dali. He was just a neighbor in the same alley for many years. Now it seems that it is not interesting to meet again. Now it's not as interesting as scolding across a door when I was young. Guken suddenly stretched out the back of her hand and gently pressed her heart against her heart. Her entire handsome face contorted. She muttered a word for no reason, and scolded Master Chao Ci, who had his mother. Because he had a fight with Chao Ci, who had already reached the first level, and the result was a tragic loss. Guken looked at the island that used to be the place where Lu Laoqing was in the past. Gonglu Island is now where the True Realm Patriarch Hall is located. The current suzerain, Lu Laoqing, is in the Immortal Realm, and he is also the first cultivator of the 5 realms in the Aquarius continent for more than 2,000 years. One continent is recognized as having great luck in his body. The chief consecrates Lu Jimao, the road name is Zhejiang, and the jade is pure. Li Fuchuan, the patriarch in charge of the law, is the only one in the first few seats of the True Realm sect. This female cultivator in the nascent soul realm was once a cultivator of the Yugui genealogy. Today the entire Shujian Lake with vast waters is almost the private boundary of the Jade Gizong's descendant. The reason why it is almost, is because there are 5 islands, independent sects, and not under the jurisdiction of the True Realm sect, so it is particularly eye-catching. Guken turned to look elsewhere. Zheng Yi and Ma Duyi were practicing there now. When Jiang Shangzhen served as the sect master of the True Realm sect, he did not have the consideration of the Zhu Shirtang, nor did he notify the upper sect. Sold it to Luopao Mountain at a very low price. The Ministry of Rights secretly recorded it in the book, and the land deed was delivered. It really cannot be investigated. There are many loopholes because this contract has neither the signature of the mountain owner Qin Pingan Jingzong and Yuguzong were also kept in the dark, and they just cooked rice with raw rice. Because Jiang Shangzhen used the identity of the sect master of the True Realm sect and the identity of the chief of Luopao Mountain to worship Zhou Fei, it was like selling the 5 islands from the left hand to the right hand. Back then, when Zhu Lian heard about this incident, he couldn't help but admire. Chief Zhou's coquettish handwriting was amazing. It must be amazing. Of course, Jiang Shangzhen paid for this immortal money from his own pocket. Anyway, there were only 100 Guyu money. At the beginning, neither the True Realm sect nor the Dali court made the matter public. Since then, these 5 islands have been under the name of Zenji, a native of Shujian Lake. Later, Yu Guizong noticed that something was wrong, and he planned to make a big fuss and take Jiang Shangzhen, a filthy dog, back to Xinzhuan Peak Patriarch Hall and spit on his face. As a result, Jiang Shangzhen returned to the first meeting of the sect, and it was not yet anyone's turn to ask the teacher to ask the guild. Sun Yuan resigned as the suzerain, and Jiang Shangzhen took over instead of Wei Ying, the peak leader of Jiui Peak. After the war, the Wild Demon clan besieged Yu Guizong, and they couldn't care less about such trivial matters. It's just that after so many years, Luopeishan has not collected this enclave. It seems that Zenji intends to establish a school based on this so he can stand on his own. In fact, this is a certain hidden danger. Once Yu Guizong and Wei Ying are investigated, and the 3 parties of the Dali court are involved in a lawsuit, it is very likely that the Zhenjingzong will take back these 5 islands. After all, Jiang Shangzhen seems to be a complete white man in the upper and lower cases, in addition to his identity as the head of the Jiang family. In fact, the more than 40 top positions in the True Realm sect Patriarch's Hall belonged to the genealogy cultivators from the upper sect, and the number was very small, accounting for less than 20%. Even so, the True Realm sect has never been able to suppress the hidden dangers of the field. After all, the 3 suzerains before and after Jiang Shangzhen, Wei Ying and Lu Laoqing alone are enough to shock the heroes. Wudao sect. There are currently 200 small cultivators recorded in the book. Almost all of them are ghost monks and ghosts, but if someone is elsewhere, if they use the method of qi, they will find that there is no heavy pollution on these islands. The suffocation is rather clear. In the Patriarch's Hall, there is only one portrait hanging, but it is not the hanging portrait of the founder of the mountain, Zenji, but a thin-faced scholar in blue shirt, with a jade hairpin on his head and hands behind his back, with a warm expression. In this Wudao faction, Zhang Tu has the identity of a named guest secretary, and his Xuanhuan faction is considered to be allied with the Wudao faction. As for the name of the Wudao faction, it has been criticized all the time. Ma Duyi complained to Zheng Yi a lot about this, but changing the name of the sect is of great importance. The Ministry of Rights, reporting, inspection, and approval procedures are cumbersome. Ma Duyi is a scumbag and she is a ghost. How dare you go to the capital of Dali to see what the world is like? It was already Ma Duyi's limit, and that was because she and Zheng Yi were with Guken at the time. The female ghost Ma Duyi, as the second in command of the Wudao faction, she has lived in that fox fur talisman for so many years and is unwilling to move her nest. She has no ambition in the matter of breaking the boundary of cultivation, but is most interested in the burden of living with small money to make a lot of money. She is also the island owner of Yunjiu Island. The name of the island comes from the illusion of Yunjiu drags the rain. Guken asked coldly, "Is the wedding banquet tonight?" Tianhujuan nodded and said, "I remember correctly, just tonight." Guken joked, "Is it the youngest Zhao Yan or the third girl Yu Yui? If I remember correctly, she seems to have an affair with the goddess of the mountain who fell into the Yuanshan temple?" Tianhujuan shook his head blankly. "It is Yu Yui who is going to marry, but I have never heard of the privacy of these Hehuan mountains." Qin Ju only said that the candidate for the son-in-law was actually decided by default. It is in Miyun Kingdom, south of Aquarius Island, from a water mansion in Baihua Lake. Young son of the prince. Speaking of this, Tianhujuan suddenly remembered the 2 flower cups on the table. Sure enough, Guken knew everything. Miyun Country is a water town and country. There is a huge lake in the territory called Baihua Lake. The name of this lake sounds gentle, but it is a vast water area with extremely strong water and extremely cloudy waves. It is also called Hulu Lake because it is located in 2 large and small lakes. The junction is like a waste, just like a gourd. In the central boundary of this waste waterway, there is a Longwang temple where the temple eats incense and incense. The shelter side has good weather because the lake is foggy and rainy for at least half a year. Passing through the waters of the Dragon King temple, the waterway is slim, and it is often pitch black where you can't see your fingers. In the season of strong winds and waves, the temple blessings of the Dragon King temple in the early years will be met. Quickly turn on the lights, ring the bells and drums, and the ship can follow the light and sound and safely dock, and continue to sail until the storm calms down. Because of their merits in protecting the soil and controlling the water, the emperors and monarchs of various dynasties in the Miyun Kingdom in history have repeatedly added seals and posthumous titles to the 2 generals in the Dragon King temple, and finally one was named king and the other was named uncle. It's just that a few years ago the statue of the Dragon King worshipped in the temple collapsed for no reason, and the 2 generals enshrined in the front hall and the 2 generals in the main hall were also missing. Occupying the temple in just over 10 years, I don't know how many official and merchant ships capsized and sank here. Now, as long as they pass the Huluku waterway, local boatmen, passing tourists and merchants have to face the direction of the old Longwang temple, burn incense, burn paper, and sacrifice to cattle, sheep, and set off firecrackers to pray for smooth sailing. Guken smiled and said, "The feng shui turns around and a good Baihua Lake is not as good as our Shujian Lake." Tianhujuan looked at his nose and heart and said nothing. Guken said, "I still envy a person like Zheng Yi who has become a general in a daze, and is a minister in an ignorant manner. Maybe this means that stupid people have stupid blessings?" Tianhujuan hesitated for a moment, then said something from the bottom of his heart, "It's really enviable." Guken said, "If you want to break away from the genealogy of the True Realm sect in Xianxia Island, I can help." Tianhujuan fought a battle between heaven and man in his heart, and finally shook his head. He really didn't dare to get involved with Guken too much. It is better to seek peace and become a nascent soul. Guken smiled and said, "Forget it, my senior aunt Han Xiao. She originally wanted me to help her find a direct disciple, but I think you are the best candidate." Tianhujuan hesitated to speak, but finally remained silent. The weather is getting warmer, the spring is mellow, and the birds are buzzing. Ma Duyuwai was holding a few long wooden boxes and a package on her back. She came to the ferry on the shore of Yunjiu Island, and was going to take a boat to visit Zushan Kugu Island and the vassal Xinchang Island. Nowadays there are so many rules and regulations in Shujian Lake that the cultivator of genealogy must have a booklet by hand and read it frequently to avoid breaking the rules. The True Realm sect has given clear regulations, and this is the power of the sect. Wudao Pai is his own site, and there are no such restrictions, but Ma Di prefers to take a boat to cruise the lake slowly compared to Yufeng. Almost all of Yunjiu Island are female cultivators, and the punter is an old woman who looks thin but has a lot of strength and said with a smile, "Island owner, have you gained something again?" Ma Di joked, "Whether you earn or lose it depends on luck. If you miss it you will get a reward when you come back. If you lose, it will be deducted from your monthly salary." She just received a few calligraphy and paintings and a few flower and bird albums, and she plans to ask 2 experts to help her to identify the authenticity. The old woman smiled and said, "The island owner is really a good man and he has a good family, but I don't know which man will be so lucky to marry the island owner in the future." Ma Di smiled brightly, "Whether it is a loss or an earning, there is a reward. On the side of Kugu Island, the Zushan of the Wudao school, there is a guest minister. It is a ghost picked up by Ma Di from the roadside in his early years. Extravagant, named Deng Linjiong. He is not good at words and has a cowardly temperament, but he is proficient in appreciation and has a mantra, 'This thing is not quite right.' As for why it was wrong, Deng Linjiong couldn't say why. He wasn't like Yuan Xian who could clearly say something, but after passing through the antique waiting for Linjiong, he said it was wrong. It turned out that it was indeed a fake. High imitation. As time goes by, Yuan Kong, who looked at Deng Linjiong horizontally and vertically at first, turned his dissatisfaction from the earliest oral dissatisfaction into a sincere one. The wind and the sun are bright during the day and the wind and moon are in the same sky at night. People and ghosts coexist here, and the relationship is harmonious, like a paradise. Zheng Yi is now a legendary monk in the world of Shujian Lake. It's not how outstanding his cultivation aptitude is. After all, he hasn't formed an elixir yet, but Zheng Yi's luck is really good. Back then, the boy who was born with a special physique was picked up by Zhang Tu and led him away from Maoyue Island. The boy who was destined to die in his teacher's sect was transferred to Xianxia Island. Selected to serve as a helper, the 2 sides lived next to each other on the mountain gate. Later, when Qin Pingan left Shujian Lake, Zheng Yi followed Guqin again, and then waited until Guqin left his hometown and traveled to other continents, and eventually became the heir of Zheng Juzhong in Baidi City. Disciple, and before Guqin left, he borrowed Zenji a peace card issued by the Delhi Punishment Department. It was only later that Zheng Yi learned that Guqin's tricks were sky-high, and he directly turned the owner of this trouble-free card into him, Zheng Yi. Zhang Tu was very impressed with this. The Taiping No Problems card given by Dali was recognized as more valuable than the identity of the sect genealogy. It is extremely difficult to transfer the No Care card to Zenji. It is not as simple as buying and selling real estate and delivering land deeds. Then, when Zheng Yi was walking alone on Kugu Island, he accidentally picked up a secret book on the ground. On the page of the preface there was a prophecy written, 500 years later the person named Zheng will get it. It's a pity that this line of characters is the kind of ink that hasn't been dried yet. It's really deceiving. Of course it was Jiang Shangzhen's handwriting. The origin of this secret book is indeed not simple. It is a secret book that Jiang Shangzhen valued more. It can make Jiang Shangzhen feel that it is valuable. The rarity can be imagined. The earliest relics from the ancestors of the Jiang family were obtained from the blessed land of the Cloud Cave. Because only ghost cultivators can study this book, the threshold is high, and the requirements for the qualifications of ghost cultivators are extremely high, so it has always been relatively tasteless. Open a door reputation. But no matter how tasteless this cheap book is, there are a lot of ghosts in the world, especially those who are sneaky but fat, and if Jiang Shangzhen really wants to make money he will not worry about selling it at all. Luckily he left Maoyue Island and served as a book boy for Chen's accountant on Xianxia Island. Guqin presented a no-mind card and obtained a secret book of ghost Taoism of high rank. In less than 30 years, these 5 events happened one after another, making Zenji the head and founder of a sect. Not long ago, there was a female ghost who had just joined the Wudao sect. Her name was Cutong. The Wudao school is a small sect, and there are very few monks in the 5 realms, so after she joined the genealogy she moved to the ancestors' hall to worship. If the ghosts in the world want to wander in the daytime, unless they are successful in their cultivation, or rely on some protective spiritual tools that can block the scorching sun and circulate their own chi between the heavens and the earth, they will end up miserably. It's just that there are some ghosts with little success in Taoism. They have to travel through mountains and waters under the hot sun during the day. This move is similar to walking water. The number of knives and soldiers, they must leave the original Yin house, otherwise it will lead to many unexpected disasters. It may be a thunder in the sky, a few lightning strikes, they will disappear. Hundreds of years of hard practice pay flowing waters. This requires them to seek a talisman as a customs clearance ultimatum to walk in the world. The best candidate is often the kind of scholar who is full of literacy. As for those who are strong in martial arts, avoid it, that is moths to fire. Martial arts fists are heavy, and there is a lot of yang and ghosts can't avoid them. How can they take the initiative to seek death? Before Tsutong left a ghost house in the city that had been abandoned for many years, she just hid under the umbrella and wanted to cross the river with the scholar, trying to avoid the eyes and ears of the river and the nearby city god, and took the opportunity to escape the disaster. I met an immortal master in green shirt who could see through her identity, and it was almost a surprise. Find a monk named Zenji. Heart Island, the largest of the 5 islands, is said to be the slaughtered remains of a great demon of Shujin Lake. It just sounds more infiltrating, but it is actually a place with beautiful mountains and clear waters. Yuan Xian, the current island owner of Xinjiang Island, was one of the many Shijianhu cultivators who died in Gukan's hands. Besides Zheng Yi and Ma Dui, he was very familiar with Chen Pingan and Gukan at the beginning. Every time he went out, Yuan Xian often accompanied Ma Dui as a bungalow. Lots of leaks. As one of the few meritorious veterans of the Wudao school, Yuan Kong is now serving as a worshipper, and his identity is somewhat similar to that of a doghead military division. He has a decent amount of money, and he has accepted a few young girls who are lonely and wild ghosts as disciples. Ma Dui did not expect Yuan Xing and Deng Linjiong to stay together playing a game, and Zheng Yi, a stinky chess basket, was watching the game. On the side there is that Tsutong making tea with a hosta and snail bun, a little fat powder and a Phoenix Group tea cake. She is really a beauty. Ma Dui opened the package and put all the treasures she just received at a low price on the table. She was not in a hurry to ask the 2 masters to help her. She moved a chair and said solemnly, "Tsutong, Mr. Chin must be watching. I'm still pity on you, let alone a man. I like it when I look at it. Mr. Chin is the most sympathetic." Zheng Yi said angrily, "Don't talk nonsense. How could Mr. Chin act like this? Don't make such jokes in the future and make Miss Chu lightly." Chu Tang said with a smile, "Master Zheng, as long as that Mr. Chin doesn't mind, I don't care." Ma Dui gave Tsutong a thumbs up, then turned to look at Zheng Yi. "Tsk, Master Zheng, I've been with Mr. Chen for so many years but I haven't learned anything, but I have a sour Confucianism, but I learned it." 7788. Zheng Yi smiled and said, "It's good to learn a little bit." Chu Tang asked curiously, "Is Mr. Chin a man of Taoism who is skilled in his appearance? How many Jiazi is there in the mountain?" She has a temperament of indifference to the world. When she arrives here, she lives in a secluded place and has no friends. What's more, the ghosts of the Wudao faction now like to practice separately, and they hardly visit each other. Yuan Xing and Deng Linjiong looked at each other, and they both envied this Tsutong. She was a cultivator who was personally introduced by the young hidden officer. It's just that she still seems to be kept in the dark, and she doesn't know the true identity of Mr. Chen. The head of Zheng and Island Master Ma have tacitly concealed this matter on purpose. Yuan Kong was born in a wealthy local family in a small country in the south. He is a recognized juvenile prodigy. He was only 16 years old when he served as an inspector of the National History Institute. The imperial court made books, and the inscriptions on the inscriptions of a country's honorable officials. During his lifetime, Yuan Xian liked to talk freely and paid attention to moral knowledge. When he was a local official, he despised the pragmatic and practical affairs such as arrests and prisons, gold grains and money, and books and accounts. The Yuan family has a very rich collection of books. It used to be known as the first in the southeast of a country. Yuan Xian personally searched thousands of books and built a new library called Qinjianju. Whether it is a collection of everyone, there is a very important sign, that is, whether the family collection can be compiled into a book based on the entries. It's just that Yuan Kong lost his freedom at Shujin Lake after he left his hometown to practice Taoism. He couldn't communicate with him and he could no longer take care of the family. After only 2 generations, the family was in ruins. Servants steal or resell and concubines destroy more than half. A few years ago, Yuan Kong had been to his hometown and only saw something hurt. Because of Zenji's relationship with Chen Pingan and Gukin, there are people who support it, and there is a Luopao mountain as a backer, so the Wudao school monks now have the earth-shaking Shujin Lake, which is generally more comfortable, compared to those for the disciples of the outer sect of the True Realm sect who have not yet entered the genealogy. The Wudao school does not say that they are superior, at least they will not be inferior. As for why Ma Dui was always reluctant to restore her true face, she was extremely open-minded and only said that Suzy had something to say. "This body is like a family. Since this is the case, then what to do with this? Zheng Yi suddenly said, Ma Duyi, I'm going to go to the capital of Dali. Ma Duyi asked, have you decided on a new name? Do you want to report to the Ministry of Rights in person? Or do you have a letter exchange with Mr. Chen behind my back? Zheng Yi shook his head and said, how dare you trouble Mr. Chen with such a trivial matter, just want to go out to relax. It turned out that Mr. Chen sent a letter before so that Zhenji could go to the capital when he had time, and he learned a lot. The letter also introduced an old immortal to him, saying that the old Yuan Ing Lu Jia was that alley. The gatekeeper, Zheng Yi, only needs to stop at the entrance of the alley, report his identity, and say that he is familiar with Chen Pingan, and he can also let Zhao Duanming, a young man from the Zhao family in Tianshui, travel the capital with Zheng Yi, saying yes, he Chen Pingan's meaning can be. So Zheng Yi wanted to follow Mr. Chen's suggestion and take a trip to the capital of Dali. Ma Duyi angrily said, how can it be a trivial matter? Zheng Yi smiled and said, the name of the sect, it's fine. In the dark, there is an ancient temple surrounded by lakes on all sides, and there is a narrow stone ladder winding up in front of the mountain gate. The young Taoist sat on the steps at the entrance of the mountain. At the foot of the island near the water, there was a stone-carved leprechaun carrying a stele, and on his back was a large stone stele weighing 10,000 caddies, engraved with the passage of clouds and rain. Taoism. This place used to be one of the many shrines of a real dragon. She stayed here not many times in the past, but it is one of the very few traces that have been preserved. The seal is cast on the forehead, and the horns are slightly stained. Lu Chen sighed, the clouds and water drifted together, and it was like autumn in his heart. Looking at the big turtle, Lu Chen smiled and said, don't pretend to be asleep over there, talk about it. How did you escape? Then why didn't Zhu Yan knock it down with a stick? The stone stele carrying the stele actually came to life. Twisting his neck and looking at the Taoist priest wearing the lotus crown, Lao Yuan seemed extremely guilty and said hoarsely, in those days there was a catastrophe, so I told concubine Fei and Zhu Yan that I am an old acquaintance with Headmaster Lu. I follow the law and have been ordered to guard the Baihua Lake Temple here. By the way, I practice Taoism, learn and carry the Book of Heaven on my back. Sooner or later, I will go to Baiyijing to meet Headmaster Lu. If they dare to be here make a mistake, be careful that Headmaster Lu is angry, the little one dares not hide it, and that's roughly what he said. The two throne monsters let go of the little one when they heard the words, and even kept the Baihua Lake together. Headmaster Lu's light. Lu Chen tuted, you speak very arrogantly, do they really believe it? De Yuan nodded his head and said in a muffled voice, it's a fluke, luckily thanks to Headmaster Lu. Lu Chen waved his sleeves, and there appeared a picture of a lady who looked like a fine brush. It was the figure of the woman surnamed Lu Wufu and said, Pin Dao's memory is not very good, and it is not convenient for frequent fortune-telling now. You can help me, yes, not one of the many palace maids around her? De Yuan's eyes suddenly gleamed with golden light, he fixed his eyes, nodded and said, yes, yes. The appearance has changed a lot, but the temperament has not changed much, especially those eyes, you can't go wrong. Lu Chen broke up the scroll and said with a smile, old man, it's rare to see each other again. If you want to complain, hurry up. I implore Headmaster Lu to show kindness and help remove the stone tablet. De Yuan said cautiously, please turn around. Lu Chen stretched out his hand to cover his ear. What, the wind is too strong, I can't hear it clearly, speak louder, ask for nothing, okay, goodbye. After the Headmaster Lu left the island, he turned his head towards the big dragon on the lake again, and after a full hour, he snorted. After another half an hour, the laughter of Headmaster Lu resounded in the Diuanshin Lake. A monk is not a device for condensing the Tao if he is impetuous. De Yuan was not too frightened, but Zhangjiao Lu was a little better, he had a lot of energy and scolding him a few words was nothing. At the same time, the Taoist text on the stone tablet fell like autumn leaves. After a while, the stone tablet was still on the back of De Yuan, but the stone inscribed Taoism was gone. Lao Yuan then condensed into a human body full of water transport energy, holding a pocket stone tablet in his hand as a treasure of his life, raised his arm high, and slammed into a water house at the bottom of the lake and said slowly, I am the violent one. Temper, can I bear with you? Xuanhuan Mountain, Fengla Town at the foot of the mountain. In an alley, Lu Tai and the girl walked in the front, and Lu Mo walked in the back about 5 or 6 steps away from them. She only felt a flower in front of her, and the blurred figure of the young Taoist appeared in front of her with a smile on her face. Exhaled softly at her. Like the wind blowing sand, Lu Mo, who had no time to react, was a young female master with a bottleneck in the martial arts of the 5 realms. Just being sighed by the Taoist priest, her flesh and blood melted in an instant, and her bones and muscles turned into countless golden stars. Sideways drifted away. After Lu Tai took 2 steps, he suddenly turned his head. Because Lu Mo, who should have made even and subtle footsteps, actually lost her sound. Lu Tai breathed a sigh of relief. Lu Mo was still in the alley, but she seemed a little absent-minded. Lu Mo shook his head. He seemed to have taken a nap inexplicably. But I always feel like I'm missing something. The woman didn't know that after the Taoist priest blew her limbs with a breath of true breath, she was like a life and death experience. In this way he changed his mind and reborn. In this life, Lu Mo, who was only a martial artist in the 6 realms, has a pair of fairy bones with golden branches and jade leaves as if his roots were reshaped. In the entire Xuanhuan mountain area, no one can find a strange picture. The sign of enlightenment that the Taoist priests of Jingxianan have been pursuing tirelessly is the appearance of a golden snake that is no more than a foot long at the fingernail that is more than the tendon. In this alley at the foot of the mountain, an extremely slender golden long line suddenly lit up, and a small red gold snake suddenly lifted into the sky, dragging it for an extremely long distance in the night, more than 1,000 miles? In an instant, the golden thread was pulled together with a Taoist boy in a Taoist temple in Xingao sect. A golden lotus flower bloomed on Lu Mo's shoulder and on that Dao Tong's wrist. Qi Zhen, the heavenly monarch of Xingaozong, opened his eyes suddenly, got up and took a step back to shrink the mountains and rivers, looking at the long golden line that gradually dissipated in the Taoist temple on the mountainside. This is called Daoyuan. The beginning seems to be the Xuanhuan mountain on the border of Qingxing country? Qi Zhen didn't even dare to do the math but was very surprised. Could it be that Headmaster Lu has returned to Howran? Just why go to such a small place? In the rough alley of the town, the young Taoist priest leaned against the wall with his arms wrapped around his arms, yawned and said with a smile, "Return to your original face from 3,000 years ago. In Shujin Lake, a flat boat rises and falls with the waves. Some people stop the boat here, the faint wind and smoke trap the water, and they come to go boating and fishing in the evening. The horizon and the lake are full of crescent moons. In addition to an old man who was fishing, there was an extremely handsome young man sitting on the bow of the boat, with a slender body and a feminine face, dressed in white, not holding a rod, just to accompany him to enjoy the scenery." The boy asked, "Senior Zhang, I heard that there was once a Hangbo island here?" The old man nodded and said, "You are a rare reading seed in Shujin Lake. I heard that in recent years, you have been secretly compiling local chronicles and chronology of Shujin Lake?" The young man hummed, "It's okay to be idle, just entertain yourself." The old man suddenly lifted the pole, dragged a pale golden carp in his hand, and threw it into the fish basket. The boy asked, "Senior Zhang, can I ask you a question?" It was just a simple question, but the old man seemed to have heard a big joke. First he couldn't help laughing out loud, then burst into laughter. The young man respected as Island Master Lu asked suspiciously, "Why is Senior Zhang laughing?" The old man looked at the moonlit lake and said, "If I remember correctly, Island Lord Lu was Gukan's previous devil king before he came to Shujin Lake, because he has a brother who might enter the nascent soul realm at any time, is rampant and lawless. Unexpectedly, now Gukan has gone to Baidi City and you, Lu Kaisang, have also taken over Oriole Island, and you have even compiled a local chronicle. In those days before you speak, where would you be with me Zhang too? Can you ask a question? I guess you don't bother to talk nonsense before you kill someone, right?" Lu Kaisang didn't get angry when he heard the words but nodded, almost. Life or death is a matter of preference. There were no rules in Shujin Lake at that time. The old man said with emotion, "The Shujin Lake used to be very similar to the wild world. The only rule is that there are no rules." This fishing old man was once a veteran of Xianxia Island. He was the first to follow Lu Jimao, the true monarch of Zhejiang River. He worked hard together and made a path. Zhang too assisted the latter to become the short-lived monarch of Shujin Lake. Later Lu Laoqing returned to Gonglu Island. Then De Li rode down south and finally the True Realm sect took over Shujin Lake. Zhang too then changed his identity, unexpectedly left Qingxia Island, transformed himself, and became the head of the Longhuan sect. The Huan sect belongs to the kind of sect on the mountain that is not in the mainstream at all. Unlike the Oriole Island where Lu Kaisang is located, it has a seat in the ancestral hall in the True Realm sect. Lu Kaisang continued to ask, "Why didn't Senior Zhang continue to follow Chief Lu?" Lu Jimao is now the chief worshipper of the True Realm sect. In the past few years, there has been a gossip that has nose and eyes. The current suzerain Lu Laoqing has plans. He hopes that Lu Jimao of the Jade Pure Realm can take over the position of suzerain. It seems that Lu Jimao refused. Based on the friendship between Zhang Tu and Lu Jimao, they are recognized as right-hand men. Lu Jimao has a high position in the Xinjing sect. As long as Zhang Tue enters the Zhenjingzong and follows the chicken and dog to the sky, it is a normal thing. It is easy to be an official and have a job. Maybe he can make an exception for him. Even if he is not a golden elixir, he can become a member of the patriarchal hall of a sect. Difference. Zhang Tu smiled and said, everyone has their own aspirations. Zhang Tu said with a smile, you, the 10 heroes of the book, Jane Lake, in just 20 years with your own opportunities, the few years of our old people seem to be inferior to you, and they can be compiled into a plot soon. The twists and turns and dangers are full of dangers, and there is no shortage of fragrant novels. After being engraved and sold by the bookseller's edition, I believe that the sales will not be bad. Lu Kaisang shook his head and said, the so-called 10 heroes are actually only 9. In the past, Gukan took the lead, and the 9 of them were calling for wind and rain in Shujin Lake. LV Kaisang's senior brother Zhongsu is the island owner of Oriole Island. The senior brothers are actually more than 500 years old. Zhongsu successfully entered the nascent soul more than 10 years ago. Not long after he left, he began to retreat again. Every time the Xinjing Patriarch Shirtang discussed matters, it was often LV Kaisang, the junior brother who succeeded the island owner, who did the work. Because LV Kaisang was a close disciple of the founder of the Oriole Island, Zhongsu respected and favored LV Kaisang very much. Just like Huang, he once made a joke, let Lu Kaisang smear fat powder, and then put 2 big steamed buns in his arms, he will be more beautiful than a woman, and then it is no problem for Guken to be the capital of the class of the gang of little girls. LV Kaisang was already at the bottleneck of the Dragon Gate realm and was about to form pills, so this time out was the last time to relax before retreating. Lu Zimeo's second disciple, Tianhujuan, became Lu Zimeo's first apprentice and Gukan's elder sister because her brother was beaten to death by Gukan. It's just that Tianhujuan hasn't shown much in these years. After all, he is a golden elixir, but he is not as eye-catching as her 2 junior brothers Qinju and Chaozhe who have not yet established elixir. Fan Yin, the young city master of Chishui City who was recognized as a fool at that time, turned out to be the smartest person in the city. The former prince in distress, Han Jingling, became the emperor of Shihao Kingdom, and Huang he became a powerful minister of Shihao Kingdom. The father and son jointly controlled the state affairs. Xuanhuan, the master of Gumming Island's young island, cast a good baby that others could not envy. His parents were both golden pills, so Gumming Island was able to have 2 top positions in the True Realm Patriarch's Hall. Unfortunately, Xuanhuan's own cultivation aptitude was mediocre. So far, I have only been in the Sevuing realm. A few years ago, I got a lot of fairy money and ran out to do business. It is said that I was scammed twice before and after, and I went home empty-handed. At the end of last year, I went out with my wallet bulging. A group of dudes in the capital got along very well, calling them brothers and sisters, and became regulars at Changpu restaurant. Most of the friends they met were the sons of officials who said they could bring their brothers to make a lot of money as soon as they met. Zhang Tu turned his head and glanced at Lu Kaisang and joked, "You are young and your cultivation is going well, so why frown?" Lu Kaisang said softly, "I always feel that the storm is about to come, but I can't plan for it." Zhang Tu nodded in admiration and said, "If you can think that way, it means that you have truly accomplished Taoism." Lu Kaisang grinned. Zhang Tu suddenly asked, "Why don't you come to our Langhuan faction to be a guest minister?" Lu Kaisang twitched the corners of his mouth and was about to refuse when someone patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, "I think Mr. Zhang's proposal is very good and you can agree. Oriole Island. The blue sky is like training and the light shakes the Big Dipper." An old man in Taoist attire, leaning on the railing after fasting, the view of the lake in the mountains is in sight. The golden light is shining, but it is not the vision brought by the robe on his body, but the reason for the flow of Taoism all over his body. The air around the old man moved slightly, and a person appeared out of thin air. This person ignored the restrictions on the mountains and rivers of the island and reached out to rub the jasper railing. The old man didn't turn his head and sneered, "Lu Jinjuan, a rare guest." Lu Jimao clasped his fists and said with a smile, "Forgive your sins and forgive your sins. You came uninvited and disturbed Taoist Ziyang's purification." In the early years, Xianxia Island and Oriole Island were not very good at dealing with each other. One was called the true monarch Zhejiang, who was proficient in the water method, and the other was called Ziyang Jinren, who practiced the fire method. Zhongsu twitched the corners of his mouth. Lu Xinjuan just knows. The color of the oriole is already cute, and it makes 3 or 5 sounds at the bottom of the leaves. Lu Zhimao patted the railing lightly and said softly, "It's really a good place. It's both eye-catching and ear-raising. The former is easy and the latter is difficult, so I wanted to annex Oriole Island back then just because of the popularity of Xianxia. The law is superb, although there is a chance of victory. It is a tragic victory. I really don't want you and me to compete with Snipe and Muscles and be benefited by the fishermen of Gonglu Island." Zhongsu said with a smile. Mr. Wu of the Shuijun mansion only left on the front foot, and Lu Xinjuan came on the back foot. Why did he get Lu Leicheng's advice to let the Xinjuan beat me here? Shujian Lake's first Hujun Xia Fan, a ghost, was born in the battlefield and was once a scout of the Dali frontier army. And Wu Guanqi, the mastermind of the Hujuan Shuifu, was most likely born as a spy of the Great Li. On the side of Oriole Island, Wu Guanqi was a guest on the island. This person was full of praise for LV Kaisang. In his words he suggested that Zhongsu, a senior brother, might as well plan a new path for the younger brother in the long run. On the other side of Gumming Island, Hujun Xiafan personally came to the door. There were also some visits in the first month of the month. The chief officials of the Waterhouse did not deliberately hide their whereabouts. Lu Zhimao laughed and said, "Brother Zhongsu, since we are both treated as dogs, why do dogs bite dogs?" Zhongsu is an outlier from Shujian Lake, the least like Shanzi Yeshio, who is extremely elegant. When blocking Lu Zimeo's unification of Jianghu, Oriole Island contributed a lot, but it was not a dispute of interests. Zhongsu was purely a sly doggo who couldn't understand Lu Zhimao, and his methods were too inferior. In Zongsu's words, even throwing a dog and sitting on that chair is better than Lu Zhimao being the co-owner of the book in Jane Lake. Lu Zhimao asked with a smile, "After so many years, you still insist that Yeshio Yamazawa is also a chi practitioner. Zhongsu, tell me, what do you think?" This old friend, Zhongsu, was born in a serious family cultivator, but all his life he has always wanted to be a wild cultivator. Zhongsu was a native of Shujian Lake, but he always wanted to be a disciplined loose cultivator. A friend for many years, a nemesis, are so inexplicable. Gonglu Island. A genealogy monk's monastic career is not without schoolwork. Even the more genius, the more the elders of the division open small stoves. Guochuanshi belongs to the kind of strange person, who has very poor qualifications but has a lot of small kitchens. This is due to the fact that Guochuanshi is a direct disciple of Li Fuchuan, the second seat of the True Realm sect, but apart from this prominent status, he has nothing to praise: qualifications, family background, appearance, conversation. In Gonglu Island, where immortal masters gather, it's nothing. As for why Guochuanshi was so highly valued by Li Fuchuan, there was a lot of private speculation among colleagues. It was said that he came from a small country in the southeast of Aquarius. He used to study martial arts. There was a fairy mansion near his hometown, which seemed to be sent by Qingji. Anyway, it is a small door, a shabby sect that ordinary people have never heard of. It's just that he got into Li Fuchuan's eyes for some reason, and was regarded as a direct descendant. He is a lot of years old, in his 30s, but now he is a 2-level chi practitioner, but Li Fuchuan seems to still value this person very much. Not only personally he taught Taoism, and also gave Guochuanshi a magic weapon for absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The rest of the disciples were already direct disciples of the 5 monks. Zun's decision: usually when he sees Guochuanshi he will always have a smile on his face and call out to junior brother Gua, a little bit of flattery when he gets close. Every once in a while, the Qingji faction will hold a mirror flower water moon, mostly in the high-rise pavilion by the cliff. Guochuanshi is bound to never fall, not to worry about his heart, or even more worried. After going up the mountain to practice immortality, it is said that the cultivator has a shallow relationship, but he has a deep relationship with the mountains and rivers, but he still regularly sends a letter to his parents and tells his parents about getting along well in a foreign country. After talking, send a letter to the martial arts hall, and chat with Master Su Yuanxia about the local customs on the mountain. After practicing, Guochuanshi stopped drinking. At first he stopped drinking completely. He didn't drink a drop of alcohol for several months. Later, after watching a mirror, he stopped drinking almost every day. Guochuanshi is not interested in learning about the things on the mountain outside. Just the practice, daily schoolwork, breathing are enough to make Guochuanshi feel suffocated. Older people have achieved something in their studies and enjoy it like a fish in water, but he can't. Cultivation is a real hard task, boring and slow. Usually, when master opens a class to teach, Li Fuchio casually said a few words of Taoism, and then explained a few words so that the brothers and sisters could understand by analogy, only he could hear it like a cloud. Just talking about contemplating the orientation of the caves in the small world, Guochuanxi is going to be blinded, and there are always many deviations, but not to mention the monks of the same generation. Even for those monks and nephews, this kind of thing is as simple as eat and drink water. Master's eldest disciple is an old land immortal in the Golden Core realm. This senior brother has several direct disciples, and he has more than a dozen other disciples. In the end, these geniuses of Taoism had to call out to the uncle of Guochuanxi, who was a cultivator of the second realm. Guochuanxi was thin-skinned at first and would like to dig a hole and dig in, but over time he will become numb and it's good to get used to it. From the beginning with red face and red ears, humming, and then walking incessantly, just nodding and greeting. The Zhou brother who had met him at the martial arts hall at first sight, once gave him a very light robe, green earth, woven mountains and rivers and clouds. If it wasn't for the help of this robe to absorb the spiritual energy, it is estimated that Uncle Guishizu is now a spiritual practitioner. Guochuanxi is not smart, but he is not a fool. Knowing that he has such a good fortune, it is all thanks to this brother Zhou who claimed to have also suffered from love and was the same as him. It's just that Guochuanxi underestimated the significance of that robe. This is a robe from Caisfeng, one of the 18 scenic spots in the blessed land of the Yunku grottos, with fairy Kaisai and spring water cloud patterns. It is very famous on Tonggishao Mountain. There should be a magic weapon rank. He showed Zhou Fei the immortal family's blindfolding technique, and suppressed the robe's unique ability to pass through the warp and cut the weft, otherwise Guochuanxi would not be able to wear it. Once Zhou Fei removed the technique, the Qingji faction's current landscape aura, if the Ancestor Hall formation could not stop it, would lose half of it at once, and the aura would be extracted by the robe and merged into those warp threats. Li Fuchuan couldn't help but don't care, not to seriously teach Taoism with Guochuanxi, even if he knew it was a waste of both parties' time. Li Fuchuan didn't dare to neglect in the slightest. After all, this disciple was Jiang Shangzhen's favorite student who recommended to her. As for the robe that Guochuanxi is wearing now, even an old Yuaning like Li Fuchuan would be jealous. It is truly worth the price. From the engraving workshop in the blessed land of the Cloud Cave, the fairy Kaisai, the spring water cloud pattern, the first-class magic weapon, both offense and defense, if it hadn't been for Jiang Shangzhen's manipulation of the robe, with Guochuanxi's shallow Taoism, he would not be able to wear it at all. This robe can actively absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and the speed is equivalent to the retreat of an earth immortal. Guochuanxi just didn't have enough houses to open. When the realm improved, the disciple would understand the rarity of the robe more and more. In fact, it is not Guochuanxi who is refining his qi, but the robe that is helping him to temper his physique and moisturize the soul. But in Gonglu Island, or in other words the entire True Realm sect, the most special cultivator was a young female cultivator, none of whom was named Zhou Caizhen. In the moonlight, the girl walked alone on the shore, holding a broken willow in her hand and waving it gently. On the island, I am afraid that she is the only one who dares to break the willow without worrying about any punishment. She stopped because not far from the road, stood a young monk with a mild temperament, looking at herself with a smile. Zhou Caizhen hesitated for a while, but was still going to take a detour and pass the cultivator with an unfamiliar face. He had already said, "Your name is Zhou Caizhen, right?" Zhou Caizhen nodded and asked suspiciously, "Are you looking for me?" The young man shook his head and said, "It's okay, I'm just here to see you." Zhou Caizhen stopped. "Who are you?" The young man asked with a smile. "Did you bully you on the Shujian Lake side?" "Well, I mean that kind of gossip behind your back and chewing your tongue. No one would dare to say anything nasty to you in person." Zhou Caizhen laughed dumbly and shook his head. The young man smiled and said, "Why don't you think about it again?" Zhou Caizhen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Really not. Which True Realm sect cultivator is such a lame approach? Seeing that the young man didn't move, Zhou Caizhen joked, "What would you do if we were sect master Lu?" The young man's eyes were clear and he said with a smile, "Then within 100 years, the old and new accounts will be calculated together. Find an excuse and I will help you kill him." Zhou Caizhen was instantly horrified and took a step back subconsciously. Because intuition told her that this seemingly modest young man in front of her was definitely not joking. In a hidden dojo of the True Realm sect, Lu Laoqing was sitting opposite a female cultivator in Beidasheng who claimed to be Han Xiaosa. Outside the door, there was a young woman with a savage demon clan aura, claiming to be Gu Kanggang's entourage, and she had to work for him for 100 years. On the shore, the young cultivator who stopped Zhou Caizhen on his way said, "Hello, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Gukin, I come from Lizhudong Tianweiwang County, and I live with that person in Mupin Alley." The capital of Yushuan Kingdom, Yongjia County, is a dark alley full of chicken and dog dung. The young Taoist found a teenager who had been to the Chongning County government office. A Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown stood outside the door, muttering to himself, saying that he had finally found you. But the Taoist priest was not happy. An old man was sleeping soundly in the house, occasionally coughing a few times unconsciously. The young man lit the lamp and boiled medicine in the kitchen. His movements were very light, and his face was full of haze, which made the thin young man even more miserable, but whenever he was in a very bad mood, he would have no reason to think of Wu Decheng's words. The young man would involuntarily smile a little, thinking in his heart that it would be great if he could become a Taoist priest in the future. Lu Chen's out-of-body spirit quietly set up a large formation here, causing headaches. It's not that he didn't report the time and didn't arrive, did he really have debts to pay off? At the top of Splashing Ink Peak, Zhao Fuyang and Yu Chuanji came together with Yu Feng. Since the two princes did not carry the three-way jade seal, they couldn't agree without a few words. Zhao Fuyang sneered and said, "Qing Qian, do you really want to burn all the jade and stones? Qingxing Kingdom and you are on the Green Peak, aren't you afraid that one will break the country and one will break the incense? Don't give your face shame." The old man who looked like a teenager shook his sleeves and said with a smile, "It's just a Xuanhuan mountain. Can't be said that all the jade and stones are burnt. If you die, you can just hit the stone with an egg and wipe off some stains." In the hot spring of falling Yuanshan, Yu Yi, who was about to get married, and the mountain goddess, laughed and walked out of the water, arm in arm. They looked at each other, not embarrassed but panicked. Who could sneak into this place without knowing it, and then steal those dresses just a few feet away from them? Palace Master Bai, who was wearing a crane cloak, was already in the Fanwan mansion. Even in a side hall, he couldn't go to the brightly lit main hall, and the seat of Bai Mao was still very much in the corner. Lu Emo left the town with the girl named Enai Qing. The woman Wufu was very worried, and the girl turned back 3 steps at a time. In an instant, the entire Xuanhuan mountain realm simultaneously sensed a majestic air machine that suddenly spread out, like a round of scorching sun slamming the ground, brittle as glass shattered and splattered. The momentum spread like a surging tide, but fortunately it was just a vision in an instant. Before all the Qi trainers, warriors and ghosts could recover, the tide would flow back at a faster speed. At that time, after the Qingping Sword Sect ceremony, a group of people went out to travel in groups, and then parted ways on the Taiping mountainside, and one of them continued to travel south together. In the same vein of Wenxing there are Li Baoping, Pei Qian and Zheng Yugan. A pair of nominal master and servant, of course. The fat man Gu Su himself felt that he and Zhong Kuei were good brothers who shared weal and woe. There is also a little girl from Taishu Mountain. Her master is the fairyland with the Taoist name, Dragon Gate. Sure enough, her patriarch is Taishisheng Outing. Sure enough, he stayed in Taiping Mountain. He had nothing to worry about. His disciple Tan Ingzhou followed them, and there would be no accident. Not to mention traveling to Tongye continent, even if it is Middle-earth Divine continent, that group of people can have no taboos. A ferry called Kaiyun passed by a rainy ferry house. Because the ferry would pass through the rain, almost all the passengers walked out of the cabins. On the bow side came a suave young monk. A noble family with a small bronze mirror hanging on his waist, a white jade crown, wide sleeves and a belt. While walking there is a sense of wind and water on the jacket. He and Pei Qian first slapped a formula to perform a unique ceremony, and then asked softly. Said, "Dare to ask fairy Daoist teacher inheritance?" Pei Qian said indifferently, "I'm not a fairy, I'm a martial artist." There are often genealogy cultivators like the man in front of me, or children of wealthy clans who go out to play, and come to talk to Pei Qian more than 2 or 3 times. Li Baoping was lying on the railing, tilting his head, watching the play. Still not giving up, the man continued to ask, could the girl tell Fang's name? Seeing that Pei Qian didn't mean to speak, the man was not annoyed, smiled and said, "My name is Chu Gao, my name is Fei Shuang, and my ancestral home is Zuebai County of the Dechong dynasty. I followed the master Lamong up the mountain to cultivate and stayed in Qizifeng for nearly 40 years, just because my talent is dull and my roots are mediocre. My teacher is worried that I will leave Qizifeng, so I rarely go out to practice. Yamazawa Yeshio, the Taoist name is arbitrary, it is worthless at all, but whether a genealogy cultivator is qualified to have a Taoist number, but it is a huge watershed just like a businessman from a country, in the capital of an inch of land and an inch of gold. Do you have the financial resources? It's almost like buying a big house. Not far away, the fat man Gusu was amazed and said with a heartfelt smile, "Brother Zhong, listen, a few words reveal so much key information. If this guy rarely goes down the mountain to experience, I will eat shit. From now on, I will pack the dung buckets of this ferry." Zhong Kuei said with a smile, "The ferry side may not dare to agree to your request. One of the reasons why they don't like to accept ordinary masters and pure warriors on board is one of the more difficult reasons for this group of people, who have food and drink in Lazarus. It has to be solved. You may stay on the ferry for a long time, so if you are doing chores on the ferry, it's fine." It was cleaning the latrine, which was filthy and smelly, and they naturally disliked it very much. Chugao has a Taoist name, which means that he is at least a Qi cultivator in the cave state. The surname is Chu, and he was born in Cuibai County of the Dachong dynasty, and the Cuibai Chu family is a famous local county Wanghao clan in Daizong Dingding. In addition, the Yundingshen Leiqi School is also the largest immortal mansion in the Dachong dynasty, compared with only 2 people. The Qingzhuan faction of Jindan Patriarch is going to win. The peak master with the Taoist name Leimeng, although not the head, is an old patriarch of nascent soul. Because he participated in that war, he has a small amount of military exploits. Therefore he is highly respected, and is regarded as an old immortal who can count the reputation and realm of Tong Yezhou today. Pei Qian smiled politely and said, "I have heard for a long time about the names of Yunding Mountain Leiqi Shenfu and Feijing Feng's true monarch Leimeng." Chu Gao said, "To be honest, I went out to the mountains to practice this time, and I followed the teacher's order and went out to collect the Leihan heavenly books born in various places, because the master recently wanted to add a Lei Fa Tao for the Dachong dynasty books. Then I heard that the Lanrao country is not too far from here, there are monsters and the morality is not low. As a result, the land of the 2 states has been dry for 3 or 4 months from the end of last year to the spring of this year. When the weather was abnormal, the Lanlu kingdom's court and the Qin Tianjian still didn't know the reason. It was a friend of mine who was on the mountain over there. When I went to investigate at risk, I found that a monster dared to occupy the gate of an abandoned old state city temple deliberately. I pretend to be a dragon thing and deceive people, so I want to subdue it with a few friends and capture it back to the mountain. To say that in Tong Yezhou a few decades ago, a genealogical cultivator like Chu Gao had a master in the nascent soul realm. There are more than 20 direct disciples of the master, Chu Gao is only one of them, not to mention that Yunding Mountain is in the Dachong dynasty, and he is not the one who holds the bull's ear in the immortal mansion on the mountain. It's different now, let alone the Dachong dynasty, even if he goes to the south of Tongye continent, as long as Chu Gao shows his division, he must be the guest of honor of the emperors and generals of various countries, and he will only try his best to flatter him." Pei Qian nodded sternly. "It is obvious that he is implying the other party. Now that you have finished speaking, you can go." Gu Su said, "If I were a fledgling female cultivator on the mountain with slightly shallower eyelids, I would definitely be willing to take the initiative to undress and untie for young Master Chu." Zhong Kuei teased, "Just like your little 300 caddies of fat, how hungry does young Master Chu have to choose what to eat to be attractive?" Zhong Kuei then said with a smile, "These little tricks are all the rest of the way in the market, and it's okay to deceive those young fairies who are not deep in the world. In the words of Pei Qian when I was a child, they are bagasses that dogs don't even eat." Playing these tricks with Pei Qian, this young Master Chu is considered blind, and encountering Pei Qian is like a little liar encountering his own ancestor. Gu Su said cautiously, "Is Pei Qian so powerful?" Zhong Kuei smiled and said, "If you are like me, you have seen Pei Qian when you were young, go to the next time in Qingping Sword Sect, you absolutely dare not take it lightly." Fatty complained, "Didn't you tell me earlier?" Zhong Kuei said, "What should I say earlier? I know Pei Qian earlier than I know you? Am I stupid and turn my elbows out?" The fat man stretched out his hand and lightly beat his chest and said in pain, "The Brotherhood of Iron is so worthless. It's so angry." Zhong Kuei frowned and said, "It's strange, how can Lauer Xuanhuan teach such an out-of-tune and romantic disciple? Isn't he afraid that he won't be safe in the evening? You'll have to ask later." The cultivators of the Leiqi sect were probably due to their compatibility with the practice of Lei Fa. Most of them had strong personalities and extremely hard bones. In the war that year, one of the group of ancestors under the leadership of the palace master, and the one who was later known as the young generals of the Pillar Stone of the clan dynasty gathered their troops and horses together, and fought and retreated, and when there was a chance they went to harass the wild demon clan and made a lot of contributions. However, after the success, the entire Feijing Feng and the cultivators of the Lei Qin School Patriarch Hall did not take credit, and even deliberately concealed this deed. There was just a gossip circulating on the mountain, that Xuanhuan Lauer claimed that Laozi was helping General Huang, just such a soldier, not to help the royal family of you who ran faster than a rabbit when they saw that the situation was not good. Tanning Zhou said in a heartfelt voice, "Go on again, you senior sister Pei has a very good temper. Leave me alone." Being beaten so stubbornly by an embroidered pillow, I punched it long ago and smashed it on the other side's door, but I didn't see him. With blood all over your face, you will never stop punching. Zheng Yuqian was actually strange. He always felt that this senior sister Pei couldn't match the Zheng Qian he imagined. Especially after these days of getting along, Zheng Yugan found out that although senior sister Pei doesn't talk much, she often has a smiling face and is very friendly, not vicious at all. Instead, she is like the kind of woman who came from a family of hairpins, who is knowledgeable, sensible, virtuous and gentle, and has a great family education. Tanning Zhou has an even more strange thing. I can't figure it out. If you talk about her appearance, it must be that Sister Aquarius is more beautiful. Why are those men running for Pei Qian? I asked Zheng Yugan if he knew the reason. Zheng Hegan hesitated for a long time, obviously knowing the answer, but it is not appropriate to speak. After all, they are all senior sisters talking about this. There are no rules and no manners. Tanning Zhou said angrily, "The law does not pass on the 6 ears. What are you worried about? Do you think I am a millet grain, so I like to be an ear to repay the god?" Zheng Yuqian then said cautiously, "Senior sister Li is so good looking, most men don't think it's any use to strike up a conversation, so they simply don't make fun of themselves. Senior sister Pei is naturally good looking, but she is not as good looking as senior sister Li. Senior sister is almost inseparable every day, and every time they show up they stand together, and a man with a vivacious mind like Chu Gao can't control Wawa's intestines." Tanning Zhou sneered, "You know that." After the little girl said this, Zheng Yugan didn't dare to say the second reason. He swallowed and hid it well. There are also some men, maybe because the drunkard's intention is not drinking, they want to get to know senior sister Pei first, and then get to know senior sister Li. Alas, these prodigal sons with bad hearts have really read the book of sages in vain. The little uncle is still a powerful, unpredictable prophet, and he has secretly let himself remember all the way through the mountains and rivers, especially the names of the disciples and the gates of the mountains. Tanning Zhou asked, "Your little uncle never sent you a secret letter or anything?" Zheng Yugan shook his head very frankly and said no. Little martial uncle is very busy and he is doing big things. In addition, little martial uncle is not the kind of elder who likes to boast. Even if he has asked someone about the sword recently, he will not tell him. Tanning Zhou looked at him with a look of pity. "Do it again, I think. Lord Yingguan thinks that you are worthless and don't bother to pay attention to you." Zheng Yugan grinned and said, "I'm not very promising, but little uncle is not such a person." Tanning Zhou said in a complex tone that was both regretful and fascinated, "I heard a friend on the mountain say that in addition to slashing people, Lord Yingguan is just as powerful as scolding people. The uncle is true, but it is false that Lord Yingguan has a nephew like you." Zheng hesitated for a while. He had just learned from the past, so he didn't dare to say anything more. Don't look at the quarrels of the little uncle, because he was a young hidden official in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and later participated in the discussion in the Confucian Temple where the two worlds confronted each other. Fei Jian, but senior brother Cui told Zheng Yugan in private that, in fact, your little uncle's ability to quarrel may not be able to rank in the top 10 in your hometown. Zhong Kui asked Fatty to commit crimes and help Pei Qian out of the siege. Gusu claimed to be her distant uncle and shouted again, telling Chu Gao's little to get out of the way. Returning to Zhong Kui's side, the fat man smiled and said, "How?" Zhong Kui looked at the fat man pitifully. It was true that he remembered small merits, but it was true that he was held grudges. If you were Pei Qian's uncle, wouldn't you be the same generation as her master? Pei Qian and his party came to Li Beoping's house, and the table was still piled with a large number of different types of mortise and tenon, all kinds of mortise and tenon as small as fingernails, even as small as tassel, and a small wooden the box is filled with planers, hammers of different specifications, which makes Li Baoping like a carpenter and a mechanic. There are several samples that have not yet been really finalized, and are roughly similar in shape to wooden kites. In addition to these, there is also a heavy booklet full of terms that Li Baoping researched by himself. Zheng Yugan had seen the scene in front of her many times, so she couldn't understand it. Senior sister Aquarius fiddled with these ingenious objects every day. What did she want to do every day? Seeing their curiosity, Li Baoping smiled and said, "Suddenly there is the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and there are cultivators in the world. Then, if one day the spiritual energy of heaven and earth suddenly disappears, What will the Qi cultivators do? How can they control the wind? How can they enter the water? Tanning blurted out, how is that possible? Li Baoping smiled, so it's a hypothesis. Pei Qian said with a smile. Sister Aquarius still had an assumption that a large group of Qi practitioners were suddenly thrown into a place of nowhere. This place, the territory of mountains and rivers, is equivalent to the old Dali, with a population of over 100 million, and they have never seen it. The realm of these foreign monks is not high, and there are no monks in the middle 5 realms, so every time they fight, they need to consume the aura they have saved, and the aura recovered through their own secret methods and magic weapons is definitely not comparable. The total amount lost will not be able to make ends meet, so every time you make a move, no matter what the purpose is, you have to be cautious and cautious. Generally speaking, the 3 kinds of immortal coins, gold, silver and copper coins, together with mineral reserves, can be roughly estimated. There may be 2 gaps on the side of the Confucian Temple or on the secret file of Liu's in the Snow Island. Too large a number, only the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is destined to be unquantifiable. Fortunately, there is a cave between heaven and earth, and a great monk can also create a small world. Li Baoping fiddled with the mortise and tenon on the table and said to himself, there are several key points in this structural model. First of all, it is assumed that the sum of the aura of all Qi practitioners in the lower 5 realms is equivalent to that of a Jindan Earth Immortal. The total amount of aura. Second, because there is no additional aura, and this world is closed, the rule that 1 + 1 = 2 in arithmetic is strictly followed. Therefore, monks refining Qi, drawing talismans, alchemy and other weird things, it means that they are all abandoned. Third, there must be several references that tend to be eternal in a narrow sense, orientation, weight, length, etc. They must be as stable and constant as possible. Fourth, the inner workings of the whole world, several underlying computing methods are required, as the basis for the expansion or contraction of a small but complete world. To be precise, it is the connection between people, objects, heaven and earth, and some kind of feedback. Is it a compensation mechanism or a random pattern? Or a combination of the two? It needs to be carefully weighed. If the context is unclear, the avenue will not be obvious, whether it is circular or linear, whether it will eventually converge to equivalent, or use disorder as the only order, or between the virtual and the real there is a certain loss value for the transformation, and the calculation method must embed this or more. Li Baoping was stunned when he heard Jianghu gone. The little girl yawned and felt a little sleepy. Alas, it was obscure and could not understand. Only Pei Qian listened very seriously. Li Baoping immediately stopped talking and said with a smile, if you don't talk about this, it's an unrealistic fantasy anyway. If she continues to talk, it will be more complicated, involving ropes and knots such as the Taoist lineage of Qi practitioners on the mountain, a certain suzerain of Confucianism and a certain backward, entrusted gentleman. For friends, each has friends, money exchanges, past conversations, words, who remembers whose heart and mind. If we only talk about money, we can distinguish between false and true, and the money in goods and business transactions are true. Void. In addition to the red line of marriage, the genealogy of the patriarch's hall on the mountain, the genealogy of the ancestral hall below the mountain. It is like a tree and it grows on the edge of a calm lake like a mirror. It can be the real world, the underwater is an illusory world, but it can also be viewed upside down, and the trunk of this tree branches, green leaves, blossoms, and as a result, can be like a human body, with fallen leaves and disappear without a trace. When it turns into soil or water, dead branches will fall to the ground and become rotten, just like the words and deeds of people, such as autumn leaves and dead branches gradually dissipating in the heaven and earth, and there will be no traces, and some seeds will fall to the ground and take root. It keeps spreading. Those flourishing branches can be, but are not limited to a line of ideas or context. Every gradually formed cognition and idea, whether someone is good or bad, can be a leaf, a flower. People experience cold and warm, fragrant, sweet and sour, feel the beauty and ugliness of others. Every mature and fixed life experience is a fruit that does not fall, hangs on the tree for a long time, and misses someone for a long time. Individuals can also be, but whenever someone is forgotten or a certain truth is changed, they will quietly fall to the ground and disappear. And the fundamental truths in my heart are the branches, but the branches can also be the 4 seasons of the year, the 24 solar terms and the 72 seasons, which are just branches. In short, Li Baoping is still classified, there is no conclusion for the time being, like silently compiling a series of books that have never been seen before and never come after. So Tanning privately sighed with Zheng Yuqian, what is this Sister Aquarius thinking about every day? Jing just wanted to stop talking. Only Pei Qian, every time Sister Aquarius raised her eyebrows and talked about this, she would listen carefully. After all, the first time when I was a child I was willing to bow down to the enemy. It was when Pei Qian saw a book mountain in the Li Baoping Academy in Dasui Xianxia Academy. Before that, Pei Qian felt that copying books had become a thing of the past, but as soon as she entered the door, Xiao Haitan immediately lost the will to win. After Tan Yingzhou and Jing Yugan left the house, Pei Qian stayed in the house, hesitating and hesitating. Li Baoping smiled and said, "What do you want to ask?" Pei Qian Yen said, "Sister Baoping, there is still half a year before the debate between the three religions. Do you need to open a small stove?" The difference between this three-religion debate and any previous debate is that this time the three religions, Confucianism, Buddhism and Taoism, each sent 9 people. In fact, there is no requirement for the number of people. On the Confucian side, there is the Chang-Yuan Zhang of the Henku Academy in the Middle Earth, Li Baoping from Beipingzi Cliff Academy and others. Participate in the three teachings debate is really something that Pei Qian can't think of. Pei Qian believes that he can fight and he can also scold others. As for this kind of debate, forget it. Li Baoping smiled and said, "There is no need to open a small stove, and there is no way to open a small stove." Seeing that Pei Qian didn't understand, Li Baoping explained patiently, "It's not something that is scripted, it's more about playing it on the spot. Otherwise, if you go there, the endorsement is normal and the people who are debating and listening are all smart people. If you show your feet, you will lose face when you lose face." Pei Qian was very curious about the matter, so he asked in a low voice, "Sister Baoping, won't you be nervous?" Li Baoping was stunned. "Huh? What are you nervous about? Little Shishu and Shizu didn't ask themselves to quarrel and win. Besides, don't you have a big brother who is very good at reading?" Seeing Pei Qian's stunned expression, Li Baoping twisted his wrist to reveal an extra jug. He laughed and said, "I'm nervous, how can I not be nervous? I have to drink a drink to suppress my shock." Pei Qian was a little helpless. Li Baoping said with a smile, "Actually, the first and last speeches, the first and the last, are the only two that may be a little nervous. After all, everyone who is on the sidelines will pay special attention. Of course, there are also easy ways. Just talk to yourself, no matter what other people say, type your draft, memorize it by rote, stand up, finish talking, sit down and you'll be fine." Pei Qian asked, "Sister Aquarius, have you come up with a general strategy?" Li Baoping put his arms around his chest and leaned on the back of the chair with a radiant expression and a grin. "Acting on a whim, generally there is only one purpose. If possible, I can say as much as I can, and strive to give all the people who are listening to it. I'm tired of talking about me. You should drink and eat. Back then, I listened to the master's ramble at Xianxia Academy and repeated some Karin real words. This time I have to make up for it." Pei Qian is very sure that Sister Aquarius is not joking. It is an extremely serious idea. If I were to be spectators of the debate of the three religions who were either in the 14th realm or the Ascension realm, they knew that they would blame the teachers and teachers of the Beipingzi Cliff Academy. Li Baoping asked, "Pei Qian, during this period of time, I didn't see how you drink." Pei Qian said embarrassedly, "I didn't like to drink at all, but the master came back." Li Baoping lowered his voice and said, "Has Big White Goose made a plan with you?" Pei Qian wondered, "What did the little brother say?" Li Baoping said, "The Big White Goose is now looking forward to the close disciple of the younger uncle. It may be a junior sister, of course, it is better to be a junior. The Big White Goose said that if the junior uncle helped him find a junior, it would be fun." Pei Qian wrote it down silently. Respect for the old and love for the young in the line of Wensheng is very traditional. Apart from the old Xiaokai's protection, as a dog-headed military strategist who is in the line of Wensheng said, it is almost like an old hen protecting her chicks. Another example is the obedience of the left and right to his husband, and Qinping's warm greetings to his husband, absolutely nothing to say. Whether it is for Chao Qingqing, Pei Qian and other nephews or Qinpinggan for Zheng Yugan, they are all obvious protections. But to talk about the friendship between peers, At that time I was with Qi Jingchun and later Cui Yu and Qinpinggan, Li Baoping and Cui Dongshan, Pei Qian and Chao Qingqing. Therefore, the Big White Goose on Li Baoping's side is very righteous and confident, and we call it inheriting the tradition and carrying it forward. The younger brother and sister are not used to bully. How can our husband and master, your little uncle Aquarius, have the opportunity to show the love and protection of the closed disciple? Afterwards, the group encountered a mysterious cave house with overlapping landscape restrictions, which Pei Qian had inadvertently spotted on the ferry before. Fatty got excited when he heard it. He had to take a look. What if there is an affair? Just like Gusu's appearance, this temperament, this conversation? Xianxia didn't think the problem was a big deal, so he just treated it as a tour of the mountains and water, visiting immortals and exploring seclusion. After Fatty Yujin, a coolie ghost, broke through the restrictions one by one, it was faintly visible, and there was an ancient temple deep in the hazy mist, which seemed to be an abandoned dojo. Fatty shrank his head and said in a low voice, "Brother Zhong, we won't run into the fierce ghosts, right? You know, I'm timid and I'm most afraid of this." Xianxia smiled and said, "Are you afraid of running into a ghost or afraid of not seeing a ghost?" The fat man answered the question, "I have a pure heart and few desires, and cultivate one's self-cultivation. I still feel a little lack of meaning." Xianxia has been with this fat man for a long time, and naturally he can hear his meaning. If there are ghosts in the way, they will come to my uncle Gusu, and just show 18 martial arts to test my Taoism and determination. Xianxia frowned slightly and said in a low voice, "It's obviously not a filthy place. Why is the evil spirit so heavy? It's already equivalent to an ancient battlefield where tens of thousands of soldiers gather. It wouldn't matter if he and Fatty were the only ones hanging around here, but now he's following the younger generation like Li Baoping." Forget it. Thinking of Pei Qian, Xianxia just reminded them to be careful and don't take 3 steps away from each other the distance, especially telling Tanning Zhou and Jing Yugan, the 2 lowest level children. At the same time, let the fat man remember to protect these 2, and don't think about the mountain and wild encounters. The fat man nodded and sniffed again. "It's like a fish in water, happy and happy." Suddenly, a deep voice sounded in the mountains. The sound was like thunder, and it swirled in everyone's ears. "Quickly exit, this place is dangerous, it is not suitable to stay for a long time." Fatty looked around and snorted, "Brother Zhong, this fellow is a bit sane, even I can't detect the source of the sound. From Brother Zhong's point of view, is it a man or a ghost, an enemy or a friend?" Xianxia hesitated for a while, but he was cautious, turned his head and said, "Aquarius Pei Qian, stay with Eugene and leave here with Jing Yugan and Tanning Zhou." The fat man stomped his feet and said, "Why?" Xianxia patted the fat man on the shoulder. The fat man shrank his neck. "All right. The pavilions, the paper windows are gradually full of moonlight, the shadows are splendid, the small garden has a winding path, the roadside is full of flowers, and there are faintly palace-dressed women, gently moving the cicadas on the temples." Another woman's voice sounded charmingly, "What are you going to do? Since you have already come, why not stay together?" As soon as the fat man heard this voice, his bones were brittle, he snorted a few times and said solemnly, "Brother Zhong, you should them away in person, I'm not leaving today anyway. Longtan Tiger Cave is going to have a walk too. Even if I risk my life, I will help the academy to determine the identity and roots of this kind of evil spirit. If it is the kind of evil people who can't hide from the world, how can I go through all the plans here? Passing by, how can you just sit back and watch?" Pei Qian just turned his head to look at one place. The distance seemed to be very close, just a few feet away on the right-hand side. Pei Qian shifted his sight again and switched to the northwest direction, but this time his sight was even closer, as if the other party was close at hand. When Pei Qian shifted his gaze for the 3rd time, he looked far away. Fatty was very surprised. What is the origin of this Pei Qian? Why didn't he know that a martial artist of the limit? He had such a unique magical power that seemed to open the eyes of the sky. Xianxia asked in his heart, "Have you found the other party's trace?" Pei Qian replied in a heartfelt voice, "I found it, but the 2nd and 3rd time, I deliberately looked in the wrong direction. As for this little trick, I don't know if I can deceive the other party." Xianxia reached out and rubbed his eyebrows. As expected of the little black charcoal who was able to deceive the few fast-moving hunters when they were young. Xianxia looked up attentively. All the blinding methods dissipated on their own, and there was no more pavilions, only a small hillside, with an ancient monument standing on it, with the characters on the ground and the characters on the list. In the middle of the ancient monument, there is still a vertical line of ancient seal characters, which cannot be turned over forever. On the top of the ancient monument, a rusted copper coin sword seemed to be placed at random. In this ancient site, all the evil spirits came from the hillside, but it was suppressed by ancient monuments and copper coins. Then Xianxia shook his head. The place was actually occupied by 2 young cultivators, who were deliberately scaring people here. One of the young men seemed to be a sword cultivator. At this moment they were hiding behind the stone tablet and they seemed to be more nervous. One man and one woman are not of high realm, they have not yet formed elixir, and they are not from a demon race. It's just that there are already signs of being infested with evil spirits. To put it simply, if they stay here for a long time, they will be reincarnated by the strange one suppressed by stone tablets and copper coins. Xianxia suddenly sensed something was wrong. A wry smile for a while. What Feijin, is it so incredible? However, they may have made a mistake by chance, or they may have been used as puppets. They seem to have mastered the center of the formation of this site. It turned out that Xianxia seemed to be returning to the inn in Hure town. The proprietress was sitting behind the counter, smiling like a flower. The most terrifying thing was that at a wine table, the academy gentleman was waving at him, motioning for Xianxia to sit down and drink. No matter how Xianxia casts his spells, the whole person is like being imprisoned on the back of a mirror. At the same time, Eugene was sweating profusely, and on the other side of the hill, there was that. When Hai is very careful. Eugene took courage, and towards that must be an illusion. Zhomi performed a forceful attacking technique to press the bottom of the box. Zhomi smiled lightly, just stretched out his hand, and with such a light touch, he knocked the ghost fairy to the ground. Unable to move, the voice above his head was like thunder. Eugene, if success is not enough, there is more than failure. What's the use of leaving you? Pei Qian stood there, sweating profusely, her eyes widened. In the darkness of the night, a thin figure eating a steamed bun slowly turned his head and looked at a yellow-faced and thin child. Zheng Yugan was in a trance, as if he had turned into a demon clan, surrounded by people of the same kind. He looked up and saw a tall city with flying swords falling like rain, smashing at him. Tan Yingzhou was also in a similar state. Only Li Baoping raised the back of her hand and tapped her forehead lightly. She quickly regained her sanity. After realizing something was wrong, she had a narrow knife in her hand. At this moment there were ripples, and another, Xianxia, stumbled out of a gate, scolding. It turned out that he just tried to enter the underworld and then return to the world, and he had to obediently take a trip to Huangquan Road, the gate of hell, and cross the floor. There was a lot of wind and lightning all the way through the gates, and he couldn't care about the etiquette and the rules. Xianxia finally returned here. Anyway, on Fengda's side, this time he was destined to owe a lot of confusion. It's just that just as this Xianxia told Li Baoping not to worry, he scolded his mother and fell into an illusion again. On the other side of the hillside, this time, Xianxia gave a startling glance, but it was not an illusion, but a vague female figure, as if holding a bamboo basket in her hands. She stared at that Xianxia in a daze, as if she was thinking of something, but it just happened. Can't remember, she sighed, turned around, looked at the stone tablet, stood on tiptoe, and tried to take the copper coin sword. It spread to the whole small world in an instant, but she did not shrink her hands, and her fingers gradually twisted the seemingly incomparable copper money sword. Xianxia began to run again on the road of Yin and Ming, and the debt was too much, but this time he had to borrow a party of Fengdu heavy treasure to suppress his own Yin spirit as a ballast stone. Damn, there are some ridicule words along the way. Is Uncle Zhong taking a walk? Hey, isn't this brother Xianxia, are you addicted to visiting the gates of hell? When Xianxia, who was wearing a bright red robe, hurried on his way, he half borrowed and grabbed a heavy treasure, held it high with one hand, and forcibly broke out of the dark path, and finally appeared beside Li Baoping again. However, he found that a man in a Confucian shirt appeared out of thin air on the top of the mountain. He raised one palm and condensed the sea of fire into a pure fireball. The blurred figure smiled and said, "Senior will be able to leave this place on his own soon, as short as half a year, or as long as a year." He stomped his feet lightly, and the ground turned into a dojo. Li Baoping put the knife into the sheath, shook the narrow knife, and shouted with a smile, "Brother!" Li Shixing nodded with a smile. Li Baoping hurriedly said, "Do me a favor." Li Hisung waved his sleeves and everyone returned to normal. Li Baoping asked in a heartfelt voice, "Who is she?" Li Shixing actually already had a guess in his heart, but it was rare to lie on the side of the bottle once. Big brother doesn't know either. Xianxia just wanted to ask this Confucian scholar, who can be called Tong Xian, about the woman's origin. Li Shixing smiled and said, "My name is Li Shixing. I am the elder brother of Aquarius. I have heard Mr. Zhong's name for a long time." Xianxia had already put away his robe, and then put Fang Zhongbao in his sleeve. Hearing the other party's self-reporting identity, he was a little embarrassed for a while. That little snow cone brush. Li Shixing smiled and said, "I really gave it to Master Chen in the early years, but it has nothing to do with me if Mr. Chen lent it to Mr. Zhong." Xianxia and Li Shixing looked at each other, smiled, and bowed almost at the same time. Li Shixing looked at that Pei Qian with a gentle expression and said with a soft smile, "It's just a matter of fate, don't blame yourself, even if I don't take action you will still be in danger." If you don't believe it, you can ask your master when you look back. See what he has to say. Eugene felt a bit guilty for the first time and did not dare to see Zhong. Zhong patted his arm. He didn't blame him, but he didn't say anything to comfort him. He just joked, "Fatty, do you know what it means to share the happiness and the happiness?" The fat man raised his head and grinned. A star in the sky. On the top of the strange mountain, a burly figure sat cross-legged, his hands clenched, his fists on his knees, and sneered. The content of the inscription is not small. A young cultivator stood beside him. It was the Mr. Sanshan Joho, who said indifferently, "It's not illegal to brag." "How is this account calculated?" "Calculate what you say." The burly man narrowed his eyes. "That's it." Mr. Sanshan Joho still said, "It's not illegal to brag." Everyone left the ruins, and Zhong Kui took the pair of boys and girls by his side. Li Shixing then traveled with them to Tongyi's house, and Fatty didn't say a word of dirty words along the way. Then at a certain moment, Pei Qian heard a voice, and when the other party reported her identity, everyone noticed the strong murderous intention in her. Li Shixing thought for a while but still didn't say anything. After that, Pei Qian said goodbye with a fist to everyone, and in a flash he dissipated, left Tongya continent and returned to Aquarius continent. In the alley in Fengla town, Pei Qian instantly restrained his fists and walked into the yard. After Pei Qian greeted her master, she stared blankly at the Taoist priest. Then Pei Qian quickly returned to calm. His whole person, fist intent, and mind were as calm as water, without the slightest ripple. Lu Chen sighed. Wanduzi, another confused old account. If Pei Qian appeared this time, she was aggressive, but she wouldn't be afraid. It would be best to ask a fist fight without saying a word, but with her appearance and state of mind, she was very intimidating. Chen Pingan stood up and said with a smile, "It's been a long time since we walked the rivers and lakes together." Zhou Qiu stood there blankly. Chen Pingan introduced with a smile, "Miss Zhou, her name is Pei Qian." Pei Qian grinned and said, "I am Master's great disciple." Sword of Coming Chapter 10-18. Although Zhou Qiu already had guesses in his heart, his name was Pei Qian, a female martial artist, and his hair and bun clothes were all in line with those mysterious rumors. In addition, the appearance of the other party triggered a mysterious vision of heaven and earth, but it was really true. It was too unbelievable. Just talking about why Pei Qian appeared here made Zhou Qi puzzled and suppressed the turbulence in her heart. She couldn't help but ask, "But Master Pei from Luapa Mountain? He used to be in the capital of Dali. On the battlefield used the pseudonym Xianxia?" Although in the Xuanhuan Mountains, due to his identity, Zhou Qiu's news is not well informed. The dozen or so Shanshuadi newspapers obtained through different channels have all been smashed, but the name of one of the four great masters of Aquarius Island. Oh, how could Zhou Qiu not know that the shadow of the famous tree of people was in the battlefield of the capital, and on both sides of the strait, Zheng Qingming killed demons and saved people, and he was like no one in the demon clan. Pei Qian clasped his fists and smiled, "Sister Zhou, you can't afford to be a grandmaster." Zhou Qi turned his head to look at the boy with the sword on his back. If the woman in front of him was Pei Qian, who could be the person who was called master by Pei Qian? Before, I thought that this young man was quite kind-hearted. He was a good person, but he was a big talker, which was really unbearable. Now that I think about it, the other party is bragging about not making drafts and making sensational speeches. It is clearly aimed at it, but she and Bai Mao don't believe it. Because it was so close, Lu Tai had already heard the news. Zhou Qiu clasped his fists and said, "Dallas Frontier Army, the cultivator of the Daliang camp under Su Zunqi's command, Zhou Qiu, the captain of the upper cavalry, has met Mr. Chen." The man in armor said solemnly, "Liang Tai, the scout leader of the Daliang camp, has seen Mr. Chen." Chen Pingan clenched his fist in return, "Dali Luopao Mountain Chen Pingan, I have met Zhou Duwei and Lu Biaochang." Pei Qianxiao was surprised and couldn't help but glance at Zhou Qi more. In the old system of the Dali Frontier Army, the captain of the upper cavalry belonged to the military commander's rank, the fourth rank, and did not belong to the actual position of the frontier army. However, if Zhou Qiu did not die in battle and became a ghost, and could leave the battlefield alive according to the new law of Dali, he would get this a high-value martial arts. She was transferred to the local garrison, and she should have started as a real military attaché of the fifth rank. If she served in the military department of the Dali accompanying capital, Zhou Qi might be the chief officer of a certain department. Stepping back 10,000 steps, even if Zhou Qiu was already a heroic spirit, It would be no problem to return to his hometown as usual to become a county town and enjoy the incense. Taking his seat again, Zhou Qiu originally wanted to let this famous young hidden official sit on the main seat, but Qin Pingan still sat in the same place. Qin Pingan asked, I once saw the imperial court dispatch monks in the capital of Dali, together with the gods of the mountains and rivers and the city gods along the way, to lead the heroic spirits who died in the southern countries of Aquarius to return home. Why didn't you accompany them to the north? Lu Tai hesitated for a moment, then roughly explained, just because my colleagues are too obsessed. Once they leave the Xuanhuan mountains, they will become confused and lose the last bit of true spirit. We still have unfulfilled wishes here and we are unwilling to do so. If you leave, even if you become a lonely ghost, you will not hesitate. Even in the face of Qin Pingan, the man in armor still has reservations. After all, the other party does not have the official identity of Dali, especially the border army. Zhou Qiu smiled and said, actually there is nothing to hide. Li Dang, the of the temple in Wuding Mountain, now has a demon monk named Gu Feng, who is Li Dang's capable general and used to be a prostitution temple on the border of Qingxing Kingdom. Mountain God, it secretly colluded with the barbarian army tent and leaked the whereabouts of our elite cavalry army. It is recommended to set up an ambush to kill. Apart from being a cultivator with the army, I was also in charge of spying for the army. In addition, the Demon Clan army was also worried that it was a counterplan, so they sent a scout to explore the road first, and just happened to meet Lu Biaochang and me on the narrow road. There was a sword repairer hidden in that savage scout. We were after the incident. To be precise, it took a few years after his death to know that the wild swordsman was among the 100 swordsmen of Toyua Mountain. Of course, the fact that the Demon Clan tried to ambush and kill our army also came to nothing. After all these years, we have no evidence. I just found out that the mountain had an irreversible relationship with Li Tang in his early years. It is very likely that Li Tang was the mastermind behind the scenes. He attempted to assassinate twice. After Zhao Fuyang of Xuanhuan Mountain knew our identity, he was probably afraid of our identity before we were alive. Killing all of us, but let us settle in Fengla town and kill the deputy envoy Guanjuanrong just because he has the ability. He will never ask about it, but this kind of personal vendetta without conclusive evidence and purely chasing the wind is not to be thought of. He took care of Gu Feng's crime, but Zhao Fuyang said as long as we show evidence, let alone Gu Feng or Li Dang, he can break his neck and send him down the mountain. Qin Pingan nodded. So, Dui Zhou thinks that it is unlikely that Zhao Fuyang and Yu Chuanji colluded with the wild demon clan. Zhou Qiu said, at least on my side I haven't found any signs or clues so far. Moreover, according to the style of Dallas spy agency after the war, it will repeatedly screen and inspect wartime intelligence. Since so many years have passed, Xuanhuan Mountain is still there. Standing upright, at least in the two intelligence offices of the military department and the Department of Punishment of the Dali dynasty, they should all be judged to be clean, and they really did not collude with the barbarian army back then. Lu Tai said, after all, there are 2 golden pills and the tree is big to attract wind. If the foundation is not clean, you will not live today. Dali's side is not vegetarian. I heard that our King Luo has established an espionage agency directly under his jurisdiction. The case is extremely ruthless. Often one arrest is a long list. The Taoist priest in cotton clothes finally had a chance to interject and smiled. Pin Dao and the vassal King Song Mu are acquainted with each other. I used to meet him often in Muping Alley in Huaihuang County, Dalichu Prefecture. Zhou Qiu and Lu Tai were not sure whether the Taoist priest's words were true or false for a while. Qin Pingan smiled and said, don't pay attention to him, he is a cheater. The Taoist priest said, at most it's eating and drinking, how can you tell a lie? A dozen or so armored warriors crowded around the door and alley, each with wide-eyed eyes, looking at the boy in the courtyard with a sword on his back, a young woman with a ball in a bun, and a Taoist priest in cotton robes. Most of them are young faces, and the oldest is only a young man in his 30s like Lu Tai. They all found it interesting to see Lu Biaochang, the most rude man with no etiquette, sitting there with his back straight. I used to see General XX, but I never saw Lu Biaochang so well behaved. He clasped his fists and smiled a few times when he met him, but he just turned around and changed his face with them, and began to say that if I hadn't become a scout, I would have delayed my future. Now who calls the general to whom? Let's talk about it again. The woman is afraid of marrying the wrong man, the man is afraid of entering the wrong profession. That is to say me, you are still laughing, I am a standard leader anyway, you bastards. The so-called usual, that is, when he was alive. Qin Pingan said, let them all come in and sit. Zhou Qi shook his head and smiled, no need. Lu Tai nodded and said, Just letting them stay at the door is a bit of a worry, and you have to leave after watching the excitement. On the other side of the door, gathering together does not seem noisy, but some people can't help but ask. Qin Pingan, how high is the top of the Great Wall of Sword Qi? With the help of sword cultivators from various continents, there are really hundreds of thousands of sword cultivators on the Great Wall of Sword Qi? Qin Pingan, is your hidden officer also an officer? How old is he, and can he have a rank? Lu Tai glared and said, presumptuous, you can call Mr. Chen's name directly? Zhou Qi narrowed his eyes with a smile and said, you can't call your name directly, just call young Master Chen. Lu Tai said helplessly, it's a fool. The man in armor shouted to the door, be well behaved. Mr. Chen is Wen Sheng's close disciple, a scholar. Don't you be ashamed of daily Enjing. Mr. Chen, I am a native of Yensong County, Yunzhou. I am very close to Longzhou. My ancestors are all businessmen and I often go to Hongzhou town. Mr. Chen, I'm from Songyu County, Jianghu. I heard from my second uncle that he studied at Xianxia Academy when he was young, and Chief Qishan taught them punishment and counting. Pei Qian raised his head to look at a roof. It was the chief guest secretary of Zhang's family in Tianqiao County, Qi Song, a warrior in the golden body. Qi Song was terrified when he noticed the vision from this side before, and couldn't help but come here to find out. Just looking at her, the old man with a halberd beard and frog belly suppressed his suspicion, gathered his voice and asked tentatively, Xianxian? The monks who have been to the battlefield of Dali Suedu, especially the pure warriors, will never recognize the female master Zheng Seiqian. Pei Qian nodded. Qi Song immediately signed up. Pei Qian clasped his fists and returned the salute. I've admired the name for a long time. The Zhang family in Tianqiao County seems to have an old family owner who is in the Jindan realm. Of course Qi Song knew that this was just a polite remark from Master Pei, but he already felt that his trip was worthwhile and he had a good face. Seeing that the courtyard was lively, Qi Song was an old river and lake, so he didn't bother himself, but just set a scene and invited Master Pei to have a drink with him whenever he had time. Chen Pingan said, Miss Zhou, Brother Lu, I will help you to draw a magic talisman and a spirit protection talisman respectively. Go home. As for Li Dang and Gu Feng here, leave it to me. Lu Tai looked at Zhou Qiu. Zhou Qiu was also a little embarrassed. He rejected the other party's good intentions and seemed hypocritical. He agreed, but he always felt empty and unpleasant. Chen Pingan smiled and said, don't worry about this, he'll take Pei Qian to Xuanhuan Mountain first and join in the fun. Whether you want to leave or stay, discuss the results first and then we will talk about it when we go down the mountain, and there are arrangements for going. There are also sayings about staying, but in fact there is no problem, there is no need to be embarrassed. Zhou Qiu and Lu Tai stood up and clasped their fists in thanks. Zhou Qiu was in a complicated mood. The sword-backed boy with a terrifying identity in front of him seemed to be a different person at once after his identity was revealed. She really couldn't combine the previous straw-shoe boy, who had no scruples in his speech and a detached personality, and the image of this young hidden official with a stable personality and understanding. Lu Tai left the yard first, and led the scout heroic spirits who lived and died together to get out of the way. Don't look at them being so noisy and talkative tonight, each with their own problems. But in fact, for so many years, whether it is riding in groups in the dark or gathering together in the alleys of Fengla town, they are both ghosts and often taciturn. Walking in the alley, Pei Qian covered her face with a piece of dough carefully made by the old cook. She turned her head, stretched out her fingers, gently kneaded and smoothed her temples, and then turned her head. She was a girl with yellowish freckles. Yes, there are freckles on the tip of the nose. Pei Qian talked about the process of visiting the ruins, but she deliberately skipped some details. Even if she concentrates her voice and secretly speaks to her master, with the realm of Baiyujing's headmaster Lu, she must be no different from speaking in a loud voice. According to Mr. Zhong's calculations, the ruins have been around for a long time, suppressing a senior on the mountain who is difficult to judge by righteousness and evil, just because the time is too long. The text on the stone tablet, the meaning of Taoism has almost dissipated, plus the broken mountains and rivers of Tonggishao affected the stability of the stone monument, so there are signs of breaking out of the ground ahead of time. The stone monument swayed and collided with the long river of time. Only those two monks strayed into it and never drowned in the water. Lu Qin originally intended to be a listener, so he just listened to a storytelling without spending any money, but Qin Shanzhu had already asked what Master Lu had in mind, so he had to say, mostly it was Mr. Sanshan Jihao's handwriting. In the ruins, the person who was suppressed by the stone tablet and the copper coin sword was a strategist monk who almost went into trouble a long time ago, so Mr. Sanshan Jiuho will personally take action, erect the tablet and put the sword on it so that she cannot get out of trouble. It is not only a victory, but also it is a kind of well-intentioned protector. If it is not like this, although the world is huge, the legal network is extensive and not leaking, with her consistent temper and behavior, she will definitely not hesitate to break the net, and there will be no place for her in the world. It's just that Lu Qin didn't tell the whole story, but I believe that with Qin Shansi's knowledge he must have guessed the identity of the other party. The woman in the basket who tried to take away the copper coin sword was the second ancestor of the military family and the Taoist companion of the first ancestor of the military family. Qin Pingan remembered the woman by the bonfire. After a moment of silence he smiled and asked, "The two young monks who received this blessing are Shanzi Yeshio?" According to Pei Qian they will practice with Li Shixing. Pei Qian replied, "It's not a loose cultivator and they are not very young, less than 20 years old. A small sect called Su Nishan, who majored in yin-yang family 5-element supernatural powers, and also studied military techniques. Back then, when the mountain gate was breached by the wild demon clan, their master smashed a Jinshan talisman that had been enshrined in the ancestral hall for many years. The original intention was to send them out of the battlefield and win a chance of life. As for whether they can survive or not, it all depends on fate." Miao Jia and He Zhou were very lucky. Finally, through a kind of passing secluded magical power secretly passed down by Su Nishan Ben Men, they were able to walk through the water and straight into the river bed at low tide, and they were not washed away by the long river of time. Knowing, walking to the end of the fork in the road like boarding a ferry at a ferry, successfully broke into that secret realm, and practiced there for so many years, Miao Jia also obtained the pivot magic weapon of the Abbot of the Great Array, which is a very rough ancient pottery pot. Their realm is not high. Miao Jia is now in the Dongfu realm, and He Zhou is a sword cultivator who was temporarily enlightened when walking on water. Now he is in the 4th realm, but he has a very strange flying sort of life, which can create illusions and make people feel whatever you are afraid of, as long as there is a slight flaw in the Tao heart, no matter how high or low the cultivator's realm is, there will be loopholes. Miao Jia has a very good aptitude for Taoism, and obtained a Taoist book with only patterns and no words in the ruins. Under her own understanding and her own experience, she became an eyebrow drawing artist on the mountain. Just relying on imagination, weaving landscape painting scrolls, plus she got the pottery pot, can control the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the ruins, and cooperate with He Zhou's flying sword supernatural power. It is seamless. Qin Pingan suddenly asked, "What is the capacity of the clay pot? Is it just enough to hold 1 liter of water?" Pei Qian thought for a while, nodded and said, "Almost." Lu Qin opened his mouth and said, "Presumably that Miao Jia's aptitude will not be very good, but at the site he has been infiltrated by the essence of Dao Qi for a long time, accumulated over time, the Book of Changes cut the marrow, and was able to be reborn with a pair of golden and jade root bones, and was force-tempered into a Dao seed. That young man is a sword cultivator, and his aptitude is much better than that of senior sister, but he is naturally repelled by that small world. Monument. He Zhou cultivating Dao there is of little benefit, but will be suppressed so the realm will last for many years. If they are stagnant, it is also a good thing. Otherwise, the better they are, the easier it is for them to lose their Taoism and hearts. They have long been occupied by the scattered evil spirits that cannot be suppressed by those ancient monuments and bronze swords, and they will become that senior. A bridge to the secluded, the real body is still trapped, and the yin and yang gods are out of the body, but they can return to the world with this, and then break the stone tablet, take the copper money sword, and be born a few years ahead of schedule. As for the 2 Qi practitioners in the lower 5 realms, why were they able to enter the site unharmed? It's absolutely impossible for them to rely on their own Taoism, or it was the elder who sensed his own Taoism in a long river of time passing by. 2 wisps of subtle breath, like 2 fireflies flickering in the endless night, only intentionally salvaged them. Speaking of this, Lu Qin lowered his voice and said a word that broke the sky. The pottery pot that serves as the hub of the Great Formation, in addition to being the earliest measure used to determine the volume between heaven and earth, I am afraid it is also the ashes of a certain military cultivator. Altar. It's not certain, it's just speculation. Lu Qin immediately smiled and said, "As for the senior's handheld bamboo basket, it's not hard to guess. Must be a heavy treasure. The bamboo basket may not be empty, it can be used to salvage the golden fragments of ancient gods floating in the long river." Because of her sharp eyes, Pei Qian, who first discovered the ruins, once climbed to the top of that strange mountain. Zhong Kuei and Eugene are all ghosts. And the pair of young girls can be regarded as half a soldier cultivator. Probably this is the so-called God's will in the dark. At some point, this young Taoist priest in a cotton-padded Taoist robe had an extra branch in his hand and poked it on the street. In fact, what Ni Qing Zhou Qiu Lu Tai saw in the eyes of Baiyu Jing headmaster Lu were actually different appearances. For example, when a girl looked at Lu Qin, it was her original appearance wearing a lotus crown. The Taoist priest in Zhou Qiu's eyes was a handsome young man with clear eyebrows. What Lu Tai saw was a young Taoist priest with thick eyebrows and big eyes. It's just the world who would question a seeing is believing. Qin Pingan said, I forgot to ask, what did Zhangjiao Lu come here for? It stands to reason that Lu Qin met at the scattered flower beach in Sayu Mountain, and chatted at the foot of Luapa Mountain. Lu Qin would not do this too much and wander here again. Lu Qin was a little embarrassed, raised the branch in his hand, shook it, turned around his shoulders and pointed to the south, and then nodded in the direction of the Qingxing Kingdom Jianghu faction. There is a vein, twists and turns, and the poor are accidentally involved. Dao, there is no disaster, the poor Dao is considered to be dumb eating Huanglian. Qin Pingan asked curiously, how do you say it? Lu Qin didn't hide it either. Chao Rong, the master of Lingfei Temple in the old Baishuang dynasty, was one of Lu Qin's direct disciples in the Haoran world. This matter has already been known on the whole continent. And the founding father of the Jianghu school in Qingxing Kingdom is also an abandoned disciple of Ling Figuan who was removed from his genealogy name and Taoist title. Zhao Fuyang of Hehuan Mountain was once an outer disciple of the Jingxin's branch of the Jianghu sect. He just learned the secret magic powers, but the Taoism was no more orthodox just because a patriarch of Jingxianan had blue eyes on Zhao Fuyang. I don't care about the latter's spiritual origin, so Zhao Fuyang is the anonymous disciple of this patriarch. It is only said that the relocation of Wuding Mountain here, and the lingering mating with the falling Yuanshan Mountain, comes from a secret Danshan, magical power of Jingxianan. In addition, the rain flag of Dao Luyu Chuanji, which can spread fog and pray for rain, must also be the secret method of Jingxian temple that Zhao Fuyang taught her. And the patriarch of Jingxianan, who preached to Zhao Fuyang carefully, is not only a close disciple of the founder of the Jianghu school, but according to the genealogy, he is also the master of Qing Qian, the current leader of the Jianghu school. For this reason, Lu Qin personally took a trip to Hehuan Mountain. Of course, the premise is that a certain Qin Pingan traveled here. Otherwise Zhao Fuyang's life and death will be made by God, and the blame will be taken by himself. Once he was involved with Qin Pingan, Lu Qin couldn't help but go out in person, for fear that the chaos would add to the chaos. After wandering around the two mountains before, Lu Qin discovered that the mansion master who fell into the Yuanshan Mountain was in love. There were 3 hanging statues of the ancestors secretly enshrined in the ancestral hall of the dense mansion. There is a portrait in the center, which is the previous master of Lingfei Temple, Xianjun Chao Rong. On both sides are the founders of the Jianghu school, a middle-aged woman with a female crown. And the patriarch who had the kindness of transmission to Zhao Fuyang, wearing a python waist jade, sword eyebrows and purple beard, and a messy mess. It was only a short while ago that Zhao Fuyang was going to trace the origin and hang a portrait of Zhangjiao Lu on a higher part of the wall. It's still the Taoist priest Yu Chuanji who can talk and talk, but it was difficult to persuade him to stop it. It's good to say that the husband has a heart. Zhangjiao Lu is such a goddess from the upper realm. Let's hang the portraits without authorization in the lower realm. The patriarch, who is high in the sky, is unhappy, attracting a catastrophe. The portrait of Lingfei watching Chao Xianjun is signed by Zhao Fuyang, a disciple of Qingjing Peak Jingxian nunnery. But the problem is that Lu Qin doesn't want Zhao Fuyang to be such a disciple. The top of Splashing Ink Peak. After the entire Hehuan Mountain and Fengla town were violently shaken, Zhao Fuyang's face turned pale. Yu Chuanji turned her head and glanced at Hehuan Mountain. Her face was uncertain, she tried not to make herself appear anxious, and hurriedly asked in her heart, Fuyang, but Cheng Qian or Zhang Qiong's sinister means. Deliberately. Trick us to come out so that we can be caught by surprise in the small town at the foot of the mountain. But the heart-pounding majestic momentum disappeared in a flash, and it didn't look like a sign of building a formation, which made Zhao Fuyang and Yu Chuanji a little confused. Zhao Fuyang said in his heart, as long as you are in the Hehuan Mountains, you are not afraid of Zhang Qiong acting sneakily. Yu Chuanji glanced at Cheng Qian. The old fox looked calm, but Zhang Kaiqin frowned slightly, and seemed to be equally suspicious. Zhao Fuyang didn't leave but turned from a tough attitude at the beginning to bargaining. Qingqian, I can take a big step back. The key jade seal used to confer the crown prince can be returned to Qingxingguolu in the near future. Sure, but you must promise that within half a year, you will exchange 3 to 5 jade seals from other countries. Anyway, there are many Fugua and Xinghua in the south of Aquarius, and there are many jade seals scattered all over the country. Less, but with the connections and financial resources of the Jianghu faction and the Zhang clan in Tianqiao County, it is not difficult to accomplish this for the Lu clan emperor. Yu Chuanji didn't seem to have expected that her husband would take the initiative to make this concession. The two sides did not discuss it in advance, but she was surprised by the male lead and the female lead. Although she was surprised, she didn't say much. Cheng Qian smiled and said, "Since it is bartering, then simply point it out. The 3-party seal is exchanged for the 3-party. You and I don't waste my saliva here, whether it is okay or not. Please Zhao Fujuan to give you the right words now." Zhao Fuyang said, "The wedding banquet after this marriage will be held until tomorrow night. Then the day after tomorrow, I will send a confidant to send the 3-party jade seal to the capital of Qingxing Kingdom." Qing Qian nodded and said, "That's the case." Zhao Fuyang said with a hearty smile, "Since it's settled, Master Cheng and Zhang Jianxian, can you sell me a thin noodle or go to the mansion to drink wedding wine, sit for a while and show your face so that the guests don't think about it, or I have to trouble you two to leave the Xuanhuan mountains for a while? Otherwise all the distinguished guests in the house will be frightened and unhappy drinking, and they will all worry about whether the old nest and the dojo will be turned upside down." Cheng Qian shook his head and said, "You don't need to go climbing and drinking. Kaichin and I didn't bring any gifts. Don't worry, we will leave Pomo Mountain now. I just hope that Zhao Fujuan will do what he says, and let His Majesty the Emperor meet us within 5 days. Go to those houses, otherwise I will sell the 2 palace princes a face tonight, but want to make me lose all face in His Majesty's side. Luamo, let them, master and apprentice, leave the town tonight, so there is no need to get angry with you over there, just say it's the family's intention." Zhao Fuyang bowed his hand and left Momo Peak with Yu Chuanji. On the way to the wind, Yu Chuanji turned around and found blood oozing from the corner of Zhao Fuyang's mouth. The previous town's vision, just in one fell swoop, severely injured the husband? You must know that Zhao Fuyang's real body is a white python, a descendant of Jiaolong. He is born with a tough physique and walks along the Panshan Mountain. The entire Xuanhuan Mountain is a veritable dojo. If it wasn't for Yuan Ying or Jindan Jianxian, he wouldn't let Zhao Fuyang get hurt. In fact, Zhao Fuyang has not yet suppressed the chaos in the world, the mountains and rivers, and said in his heart, "Go back to the mountains and talk about it." Yu Chuanji said cautiously, "I really don't need to lure them up the mountain?" Zhao Fuyang sneered, "If you can't eat it, Qing Qian is not an ordinary immortal. Zhang Kaichin is also a sword cultivator. If you add Zhang Qiong who doesn't know where to hide, be careful to break his belly." Qing Qian raised his palm and used his palm to look at the mountains and rivers. Sigh. Zhang Kaichin said in her heart, "Qing Shibua, shall we leave now?" Qing Qian smiled and said, "All right, so as not to startle the snake. It doesn't matter whether Zhao Fuyang has used a trick or has other intentions, Xuanhuan Mountain is destined to do weddings and weddings together." The long sword behind Zhang Kaichin was unsheathed, and the light of the sword was as bright as an autumn leaf. She stepped on the long sword with her toes a little, and Yu Jin traveled far away, followed the old man who looked like a teenager, left Splashing Mo Peak together, and drew 2 thorns again. Night-shattering light. It turned out that the imperial troops and horses of the 3 kingdoms, including Qingxing Kingdom, had gathered at the edge of Xuanhuan Mountain according to the agreement, and the deployment of troops was extremely concealed, without revealing the slightest rumor in advance, and many generals leading the troops did not even know who they were going to attack. The Lu family emperor even went on a personal expedition, leading a group of royal worshippers, various landscape gods and elite frontier troops, together with the rest of the 2 countries to close the net, and from 3 directions besieged and attacked Xuanhuan Mountain. Just talking about the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom, they dispatched 3,000 forbidden troops, 8,000 frontier cavalry elites and 20,000 foot soldiers, plus the Yuesh engine who was temporarily recruited to the frontier army station, dozens of others. The gods, the Jianghu faction removed the Jingxin's lineage, led by Chueqing Peak, and all the cultivators who were directly descended from the peaks had all gone down the mountain and temporarily served as the cultivators of the Qingxing Kingdom. Emperor Lu and the monarchs of the other 2 countries agreed to raise troops to encircle and suppress Xuanhuan Mountain at the turn of Haishur and Zishur tonight. However, even if the cultivators and gods used all kinds of magical powers to clear the way plus the ferry boat and the talisman boat, they would still have to see Xuanhuan Mountain in the early morning of tomorrow. The only people who knew the inside story in advance were the Emperor Lu of the Qingxing Kingdom, Qing Qian, the real protector of the country, the ancestor of the Zhang clan of Tianqiao County, Zhang Kaiqin, the swordsman, and the emperors and national teachers of the other two countries. Together there would be no more than 10 people. Naturally, the Qingxing Kingdom and the Zhang clan of Tianqiao County contributed the most, promising to destroy the Xuanhuan mountain this time. The Lu clan only symbolically takes a very small piece of land, and the rest will be handed over to the two countries to divide up by themselves. To level the boundaries of Xuanhuan mountain, the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom will strictly follow the established marching route. Along the way, more than a dozen large and small dojos, cave houses and confiscated spoils will be the only source of income for Qingxing Kingdom's military dispatch this time. The entire treasury as well as the dazed Yuanshan mansion and the Wuding Mountain Fanwan mansion, together with the two mountain shrines, all the treasury and all the proceeds, the Qingxing Kingdom will not interfere in the slightest, and the two allies will share the account after the war. Zhang Keikin's sword light and the real person Cheng Qian's Yufeng figure suddenly dissipated. After that, both sides hid their breath, sneaked for more than 100 miles and finally came to a mournful mountain. The mountains and fields are swaying, the vegetation is lush, and on both sides of the Panshaban, the ancient trees are hundreds of years old, and there is no business. A burly old man with white hair and beard sat on the boulder by the cliff and asked with a smile, "Is Zhao Fuyang still unaware that the situation is not good?" Cheng Qian sat cross-legged beside him, nodded and said, "Because there is a new mountain protection formation, the nascent soul Earth Immortal, who is not hostile to several nearby countries. If I were him, I would take it lightly, relying on him and Yuchuanji. If we can defend and run, we are sure that we will not dare to forge a deadly feud with Xuanhuan Mountain." Zhang Kaiqin called the old man to Grandpa, and the old man smiled and nodded. They have formed a siege of Xuanhuan Mountain, catching turtles in the urn. Xuanhuan Mountain will hold a wedding banquet tonight. The group will gather together and the snakes and rats will be in a nest. It saves a lot of trouble. Otherwise, there are more than 30 places in this area of thousands of miles. A fish. Zhang Qiong sighed. It seems whimsical, but it works. Regardless of his background, Zhao Fuyang is indeed a rare genius of cultivation. Cheng Qian said, "In the end, the other side is used in the crooked and evil ways. In the long run, the mind of the Tao is invisibly drawn by the nature. Instead of tempering the nature with the mind of the Tao, it will only mislead others and oneself. On the mountain, it is actually a positive saying." Zhao Fuyang and Yu Chuanji, a python monster and a fox spirit, were entrenched on both sides of a large river in their early years. It seems that the well water does not violate the river water. And this big river in the middle of Aquarius continent later became one of the main roads of Dadu. And Zhao Fuyang, whose real body is a white python, first used the secret method of winding the mountain to completely refine the entire falling kite mountain, and then helped Yu Chuanji to relocate to a Wuding mountain, and taught her a superior house technique. Mating tail-shaped diligent way. Zhang Qiong was non-committal about this but just joked. This pair of Taoist companions really use the sky as the bed and the ground, and they have a field battle. It is really unseemly for a serious person like this old man to teach. Qing Qian reminded, "Elder Zhang, don't be disrespectful to the old man. Kaiqin is still here. When you Zhang Qiong was young, didn't you have a few fat powders? You owe a lot of love debts up and down the mountain." Who called himself Jiang Shangzhen of Tianqiao County? Zhang Qiong asked angrily, "How is Yu Chunzi's golden elixir?" Qing Qian said, "When I see you today, it should not be underestimated." Although she has no signs of needing to retreat for the time being, it must not be too late. Zhang Qiong tutade, "That's the same as Master Cheng. It's all about the bottleneck of Jin Dan. Zhao Fuyang is just that. After all, he has passed the true inheritance in your Jin K faction. In terms of teacher inheritance, he is inferior to your head. Not much. He was born with a good background and his aptitude for cultivating is better. I was also convinced that he was promoted to the nascent soul. The white python turns into a dragon, and the Yin Jiao vomits a cloud of miasma. Fox charm. It would be fun to follow Zhao Fuyang to the nascent soul realm. She is a fox spirit, an ordinary Jindan cultivator. She is not easily toyed by her applause, just picking young and replenishing Yin who mice love is also the most vengeful. If she gets away with this siege, I will definitely stay far away. Not to mention Zhao Fuyang, who has already achieved a golden elixir over the years, but only to say that this time when he saw the fox demon Yu Chuanji at Pomo Peak, Qing Qian found that she also had signs of a bottleneck, which shows that Zhao Fuyang personally opened up this shortcut of cultivating, and they have indeed made it through. If Zhao Fuyang is given some more years, he can concentrate on his spiritual refinement. Come to temper Hehuan Mountain, maybe within a 10-year period he and his Taoist companions are really expected to both enter the nascent soul realm. It can be seen that it is no exaggeration to say that Zhao Fuyang is a hero. Zhang Qiong said with a smile, "It is estimated that Zhao Fuyang can't figure out why the other two countries with constant border friction are willing to join forces with the Lu family of the Qingxing kingdom." Cheng Qian said indifferently, "Since ancient times, fame and fortune have never been separated from one another. It seems that the Lu family of the Qingxing kingdom is seeking a name, and the other two countries are seeking profits, each taking what they need. In fact, the monarchs of the other two countries are now extremely polite to the Lu family, and I believe they will only be more polite in the future. After all, apart from the Qingxing kingdom in the entire Aquarius continent for the time being, there is no court under the mountain that can invite that big man to attend the ceremony in person." The Shuyue mansion of Baihua Lake, this time a large group of people came. Previously, Bai Mao and the others were looking at the wasteland from the top of the Momo Peak. The long snake of fire they saw was the battle of this water mansion. Miss Shansan's Shuyue mansion is inevitable. Hu Junzhang Xiangdao, together with his Taoist companion Wei Chan, and his youngest son xuanhuan, came to Hehuan Mountain together. Wanshan's quick son-in-law, Chenglong, is just a passing scene tonight. Shuyue Mansion is located in Baihua Lake in Miyun Country. It occupied the Dragon King Temple, which is said to have been eaten for thousands of years, drove away the temple blessings, used his own hands, made waves and asked all passers-by for filial piety and incense offerings. Zhang Xiangtao opened up a palace at the bottom of the lake, using the dragon palace shape of an overreaching land lake. At this moment, in the Fanwan Mansion, a ring-shaped banquet hall was specially built for the purpose of recruiting relatives tonight. Among them there was a single elegant flower hall. Only Zhang Xiangdo's family of 3 was drinking, and the rest of the officials of the water mansion were arranged on the side of the falling Yuanshan mountain. A young man with a short stature said in a stern voice, "I heard that the 3 girls have a bad reputation, and the boy has to wear a green hat before entering the bridal chamber with her." Zhang Xiangdao looked like an emaciated old man, wearing a crown facing the sky, wearing a black dragon robe, and performed a natal water method. The fog in the flower hall was hazy for a while, preventing the partition wall from having ears, and then he twisted his beard and smiled. "Taoist, if you think about what to do with this kind of thing, your belly should be bigger. On Hehuan Mountain there are 3 women and 1 man. The only one with a handle in the crotch of Yu Zhen is an unreliable thing. It seems that he is not interested in inheriting the family business, and likes to wander outside. Maybe one day you will die outside and no one will collect the corpse. Han Quan, if you work hard one day, you may be able to hold the title of Lord of the 3 Houses by yourself." The woman in the palace dress with the heavy powder on her cheeks giggled straight. With a naturally acerbic appearance, she pretended to smile charmingly. "Han Quan, my mother is someone who has come here, and is most familiar with the matter of love between men and women. At a glance, it can be concluded that you wandering this good daughter-in-law, who has yet to go through the door, and the goddess of the mountain who went up the mountain and fell to the kite mountain at first glance, they are accustomed to the sideburns. Good son, you are very lucky." The young man's eyes lit up. "Really? The goddess of the mountain who fell into the Yuanshan temple at first glance, is a stunner who is good at fighting in bed. Compared with the 3 girls of Hehuan Mountain who are about to marry, her appearance and temperament have to be not bad." He already coveted her, but because of the identity of the other party, he didn't dare to make trouble. "Never thought that there would be such a marriage?" The young man grinned and said, "So that means Yu is pregnant with Liujia, buy one get one free, and the child will endure it." Zhang Xiangdao slapped the table and praised, "Those who achieve big things are not careful about the little things. If you have this amount of money, why not worry about big things?" At this moment, a Qilong jade pendant on Zhang Xiangdo's waist buzzed, and there were 2 of them just in pairs. They were unintentionally obtained from the mountain treasure hidden in the Dragon King Temple. Zhang Xiangdao finally figured out the way out. "Come, one of the wonderful uses is that it can transmit sound from thousands of miles." Zhang Xiangdao handed the other piece to a tortoise-like prime minister in the Dragon Palace. "As for the eldest daughter who is extravagant and lustful and only supports her face, forget it. Now Zhang Xiangdao has no expectations of her at all, and he has to rely on his youngest son Zhang Hanquan to support her huge family business in the Dragon Palace." "Master Hujun, the big thing is bad. The steel of the Dragon King Temple somehow came to life tonight. The beasts are so murderous, and controlling the stone steel that has been refined into treasure is a total mess for us in the Dragon Palace of Shuefu. Smash, the small messenger was sent to discuss, but the other party didn't answer and only cared about the massacre. Now the soldiers of the Waterhouse have suffered heavy casualties, dying and fleeing. There is not 1 out of 10, the waves are raging, the water veins are chaotic, and the Dragon Palace is destroyed. We're all destroyed. The body of Her Royal Highness Princess Long was also smashed into mud by the strange stone tablet, leaving only the soul to escape, and Her Royal Highness Princess Long took refuge on the shore on her own. I was lucky enough to escape to the shore, and I had a little spare time to catch my breath, so I reported this to Lord Hu, and asked Lord Hu to return quickly. Ah. Zhang Xiangdao and the woman looked at each other. Gone? As the Turtle Prime Minister wailed, there was another dull sound that seemed to crack open, and there was no more sound. After a while, an unfamiliar voice sounded again and said slowly, "This little turtle can't bear to be beaten. I have already shot him to death, Zhang Xiangdao and the old muscle spirit, since you have already heard the news. If you want to come back, go back. I just happened to send you all on the road together. Even if I don't go back, I will go look for you." The wedding banquet in Xuanhuan Mountain is about to start. All the guests have already taken their seats. Shanzai Xiao, the gods of the shrine, and the name of the house can be arbitrarily chosen, and the location must not be arbitrarily seated. In addition to Shuyue Mansion, there is also Shujian Lake Qingju. He is also qualified to occupy a flower hall alone. The other first-class guests of Xuanhuan Mountain occupy the largest banquet room. For example, Mrs. Pipa, whose name is Tianlai Cave, she gave away 1 lei xing and 1 water pill, which were considered extremely polite guests, just because she and Fanwan Palace Master Yu Chuanji were very close friends. Sitting beside her was an old man named Black Dragon Immortal Monarch, a monk of the Sevuing Monster clan who gave a red envelope of 18 snow money, who was once of water in the south of Aquarius. There is also the Demon King Tang Kuan, whose cave dwelling is located on the Ape Road. However, in the cave dwelling he has a horizontal kung fu, which is equivalent to the physique of a martial artist in the 5 realms, making him a consummate gun and stick kung fu. As for the sturdy man who came here to congratulate him on a private talisman boat, he was different from Tang Kuan, a genuine and pure martial artist with 6 realms. This time he came to the door to congratulate him, empty-handed and without gifts. He was most greedy for cups. It was obvious that he brought 2 maids to Xuanhuan Mountain and coveted the few pots of Xinjia wine. Fu Qi, because he was a friend of Yu Zhen, also took his seat here. The person in charge of greeting the guests here is the goddess of the mountain falling from Xuanhuan Mountain. She wears dark purple clothes and she is graceful and beautiful. In the banquet room next door, it is the Mountain Li Sang of Wuding Mountain who is in charge of hospitality. In the end there is a side hall. The steward of Fanwan House is responsible for serving tea and water, and connecting with heroes from all walks of life. Wejiziling Qingbai Mansion, the master of Baimeabai Mansion, gave 50 pieces of snow money and a set of imperial ancient ink so he can only drink here. Fortunately, although Xuanhuan Mountain has divided the guests into 3, 6, 9 and so on. But when it comes to drinks they are treated equally. It is a kind of expensive Xinjia wine with 2 pots. It can be seen that Xuanhuan Mountain is still rich and Baimao drinks, which is quite subtle. It is estimated that it will be able to return to the original soon. Palace Master Bai, who looked like a scribe in a crane cloak, picked up a piece of cake from the plate and chewed it carefully. From his direction he could just see the Empress of the Falling Yuanshan, full of the beauty of a mature woman. It's just that for some unknown reason the 2 palace lords of Xuanhuan Mountain, Zhao and Yu, and their children did not show up, which was 2/4 of an hour longer than the scheduled time. On the other side of the town's main street, a young Taoist held a branch as if driving a car, looked up at the 2 mountains of Zuiyuan and Wuding, and said with a smile, "If you can't do it, Wuyuan Mountain is also a cave, and the poisonous python sends a cave to a fox as a cave." The marriage recruitment is about to begin. All the demon kings, immortals and cave masters in the Xuanhuan Mountains have all arrived. Under the archway at the foot of the mountain, there is no steward Yu who has called the name. He has already gone to Fanwan Mansion to entertain guests. Only the accountant who was in charge of writing the gift list was still sitting behind the table covered with red satin. "Manager, you did not forget to arrange a few guards, lest the accountant said he was gone." Lu Chen turned his head to look at the big tree and said with a smile, "This Zhao Fiang is not bad. Master leads the door to practice as a person, and he just realized a shortcut to nascent soul. With a budding figure, the Jin K faction has missed a genius." If he were to find a place with strong mountain fortunes in the azure world with 9 mountains and 1 water, entrenched in the dragon veins and sitting on the earth snake, Zhao Fuyang would have long been a Yuanying mountain flood dragon who could call the wind and the rain. It is too difficult to walk the water-melting Jiao dragon in the Qingming world with thin water transportation, so there are many mountain spirits who are forced to go to Panshan and Lianyue. At the table at the foot of the mountain, Lu Chen took out 3 red envelopes from his sleeves, each of which contained 2 snow money, and on the congratulatory gift list, it said Chen Ren Zhengqian Taoist Lu Chen. Going up to the dense mansion of the mountain, an emergency meeting was held in the ancestral hall. There were no outsiders, not even the 2 mountain gods. The eldest daughter Zhao, the second son Yu Zhen, the third girl Yu Yui who is about to marry, and the most favored 4th young lady Zhao Yan. Zhao Fuyang said indifferently, "Just got the information. Qing Qian and the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom took the lead and joined forces with the surrounding 2 countries to attack my Xuanhuan mountain in a big way. All the troops and horses are already on their way. The number of officers, subordinates and cultivators is probably 300 or 500 together. There are also a small number of 100,000 soldiers under the mountain. The encirclement and suppression of Xuanhuan mountain from 3 directions have already been launched. Obviously it was an appointment long ago." Yu Yui said in shock. Qingxing Kingdom has always had a grudge with them. There have been constant border disputes over the years, so how could they suddenly join forces? Zhao Fuyang sneered, "What's the point of asking such a question now?" Yu Zhen said with a complicated expression, "With the Emperor Lu of the Qingxing Kingdom and Qing Qian, really there is no room for maneuver?" Zhao Fuyang's face was gloomy and he shook his head and said, "No need to talk about it, it will only be a waste of words. Everyone has taken the wrong medicine, and they have to come and eat the hard bone of Xuanhuan mountain." Yu Chuanji whispered, "Where's Mrs. Pipa?" Zhao Fuyang glanced at her coldly. Yu Chuanji was silent and said nothing more. Zhao Fuyang looked at Yu Zhen and asked, "Your friend surnamed Yen is from the Fu clan's Yen Hall of Fame?" Yu Zhen nodded and said, "His real name is Fuqi. He is not only a son of Yen Yutong of Fuss family, but also highly valued by the ancestors of Yen Yutong. He was brought by his side and cultivated carefully since childhood. The chair in the ancestral hall will be replaced by him only when the talisman is in the golden elixir." Yu Chuanji said, "Yu Zhen, you will inform Qinju and Fuqi later, and let them go down the mountain immediately. One is a cultivator of the genealogy of the true realm, and the other is a member of the Fu family. Even if you meet Qing Qian and the others halfway, I believe that just revealing their identities will not stop them from leaving." Yu Zhen heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Originally, I wanted to purchase and collect jade seals from Tong Yezhou through Fuss Yen Yutong to help my father increase your Taoism. On Aquarius Island, it is already difficult to obtain these jade seals from the Emperor's family, unless they are robbed or stolen, but it is too risky to do so." Zhao Fuyang praised, "I have a heart." Zhao Yan was at a loss. What are the parents going to do? Yu Yui's face was pale and colorless, and he said in a trembling voice, "She and that Li Tang?" Zhao Fuyang sneered and said, "The moment they became the mountain gods of the 2 mountains of Zhuiyuan and Wuding, they were already doomed, sooner or later." Zhao Yan finally couldn't help but ask, "Father, mother, what are you discussing?" Yu Zhen said helplessly, "What do you think about this marriage proposal?" Zhao Yan asked, "Don't want the 3rd sister to marry that idiot Xuanhuan? Should we marry Xuanhuan Mountain and Baihua Lake Shuyue Mansion to become in-laws? Baihua Lake is an important waterway business hub. As a result, Jinkai faction and Tianqiao County Mrs. Zhang will be a little more afraid of us." Zhao Fuyang sneered and said, "Zhang Xiangdao and that old muscle spirit, an old turtle with a rotten Taoism, a dragon gate realm with no hope of forming a pill, are they also worthy of being my in-laws?" Yu Chuanji covered her mouth and smiled coquettishly, her eyes suddenly sharpened. "Tonight is the time for your father's preaching. All the people who participated in the banquet in Fanwan Mansion are weird, their flesh and blood, soul and spirit, demon pills. Those the golden body of the prostitute who came from the wrong way will be crushed by the falling kite and the Wuding mountain, and they will all be ground to the ground, and they will all be reduced to the foundation of your father's enlightenment in the nascent soul realm." In Fengla town at the foot of the mountain, there are about 200 households living in the sun. In addition to attracting mountain monsters, soldiers gather into an army, etc., it is just Zhao Fuyang and Xuanhuan Mountain posing for outsiders like Qing Qian. It seems to be a long-term operation here as a separatist force in a feudal town. In the past, Zhao Fuyang helped the gods in the temples and became the White Book, gods in the courts of various countries. Naturally, it was to prevent Mrs. Pipa and Tang Kuan from becoming suspicious in the Xuanhuan Mountains, especially Qing Qian, who was the most suspicious by nature. It's easy to do bad things. After so many years of operation, the number of ghosts, mountain zealots, and prostitutes in the Xuanhuan Mountains has become saturated, so Zhao Fuyang organized such a so-called mountain marriage to catch them all. Anyway, several imperial courts, including the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom, regarded these goods as thorns in their eyes. Originally, Zhao Fuyang planned to join the nascent soul, and then rely on such a great achievement and strangulation to make a deal with them. If the other party is interested, he will help the Taoist priest Yu Chuanji to get a title, and let her be a legitimate mountain god, and he himself, who has entered the nascent soul, will be in the line of Jingxianan, and be favored by the Jinkei faction. Feng begged for justice, and it was done with one stone. Yu Chuanji said cautiously, "Husband, those scouts in the town, their identities." The fierce Zhao Fuyang dared to kill even Qing Qian now, but this matter was obviously quite a headache. Zhao Fuyang thought for a moment and said, "You move, wait and kill Gu Feng, unscrew the head, throw it directly to Lu Tai and the others, then drive them out of the town and tell them again except for Gu Feng, Wu Tingshan Li Tang will soon be killed, and you don't need to say anything more to avoid unforeseen complications. If they don't want to leave the town, then they should stay, and they can't blame anyone for their own death. When you open the mountain protection formation, you only need to hold on for a quarter of an hour. If you can hold on for half an hour, I can completely stabilize the nascent soul realm. During this period, the treasury and all of your savings will be used up. No need to worry. During the crucial quarter of an hour, you should pay special attention to Qing Qian, Zhang Qiong, Zhang Kaiqin, Wu Fu Qi Song, and don't let them ruin my good deeds. After a quarter of an hour, you're all done. Young isn't the emperor of the Lu family of Xinghua driving his own expedition? It's just that when I enter the nascent soul realm, I will go to meet him for a while. I want to see Qing Qian and King Xingguo, as well as the confidence that no jade and stone are burned. Qing Qian, still don't you dare to say that we hit the stone with an egg, just wipe the sleeves and it will be clean. In fact, the entire Fanwan mansion is located within a large mouth of the real body of the big python, and Zhao Fuyang can swallow it in his stomach with a little raised his head. As a fox charm, Yu Chuanji has already sacrificed the red powder ecstasy tent, which is one of the life objects, plus those drinks and food that have moved hands and feet, hiding greedy insects and blind potions. Zhao Fuyang and Yu Chuanji first made mountain refining, and then the pair of Taoist companions will each show their real bodies to turn over the mountain, as if they are going through the clouds and rain. In 2 mountains. After that, Zhao Fuyang can refine the mountain as a part of his true body, just like a small world, no longer need to draw the ground as a prison, and be detained in the same place by the falling Yuanshan, which is both a dojo and a cage. Zhao Fuyang said solemnly, "Success or failure is here. As long as tonight's event is successful, if the luck is a little better, your mother can break the bottleneck of Jindan and enter the nascent soul realm in one step. At that time, whether it is with the Lu family of the Qingxing Kingdom, the emperor bargained, whether I would replace Qing Qian as the head of the Jinkei sect and the real person protecting the country, or whether we simply moved to Tongye continent and established a sect there, it was a trivial matter." The 3 of them were walking on the mountain road, near the Fanwan mansion with bright lights. The young Taoist still poked the ground with a curved branch. One accidentally stabbed the branch in the abdomen and threw the branch away. Lu Qin rubbed it. Stomach, thumbs up and smiled. For a Jindan cultivator, it is indeed a first-class, generous and daring. Lu Qin leaned back, glanced at the empty scabbard that Qin Pingan was carrying at the moment, and said with sincere admiration, "A piece of ancient water, don't break the enemy thinly." You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.